The Abatwa lived in the grasslands of southern Africa, where they became known as the tiniest hunters in folklore. These warriors stood no taller than an ant, yet they could kill creatures hundreds of times their size with their poisoned arrows. People both feared and respected the Abatwa because they would shoot anyone who failed to notice them or treated them with disrespect. The Abatwa looked like fully formed humans, but they were so small they could ride ants like horses and hide inside the petals of flowers. They carried tiny bows and arrows that fit in their small hands, and wore clothes made from flower parts and grass fibers. The men grew long beards that dragged on the ground as they walked, while the women kept their hair tied up with spider silk. The most famous story tells of a young man who almost stepped on an Abatwa warrior in the grass. The tiny hunter called out just in time, asking the man if he had seen him. When the man answered honestly that he had not seen him until he spoke, the Abatwa spared his life. The hunter explained that if the man had lied and claimed he saw him earlier, he would have shot him with a poisoned arrow. The Abatwa shaped how people walked through the grasslands, as travelers learned to move slowly and watch each step with care. Parents taught their children to be truthful and respectful to all beings, no matter how small, since an Abatwa might be listening. Hunters and farmers would leave tiny bits of food on the ground as gifts, hoping to earn the good favor of these small but mighty warriors. The cursed hunter Actaeon lived in ancient Greece, where he roamed the forests near Mount Cithaeron. His greatest skill, hunting with his pack of 50 trained dogs, became the source of his doom. The goddess Artemis punished him harshly after he stumbled upon her bathing in a sacred spring, an act that broke divine law. Actaeon began as a strong young man with dark curly hair and a hunter's keen eyes. After Artemis cast her spell, he changed into a large stag with branching antlers, soft brown fur, and the terrified eyes of a human trapped in an animal's body. His voice turned from human speech to the frightened sounds of a deer. The transformation happened quickly on that fatal day in the woods. When Actaeon and his hunting party split up to track different trails, he walked alone into a hidden valley. There he found Artemis, goddess of the hunt, bathing with her nymphs in a clear pool. Before he could turn away or apologize, she splashed him with enchanted water, changing him into a stag. His own hunting dogs, trained to chase deer, did not recognize their master in his new form. They picked up his scent and pursued him through the forest. Though Actaeon tried to call out to them, only deer sounds came from his mouth. His faithful hounds, now turned against him, caught their transformed master and tore him to pieces. This tale warned Greek hunters to respect sacred spaces and divine privacy. It showed how quickly fortune could turn, even for skilled and noble people. Hunters often left small offerings at Artemis's shrines, hoping to avoid Actaeon's fate, and parents used his story to teach their children about respecting the gods. The Agropelter haunted the deep forests from Maine to Oregon, hiding inside hollow trees to ambush anyone who walked below. This fierce creature could throw branches and wooden splinters with the force of a cannon shot, making it one of the most feared beings in American lumber camps. Workers feared these beasts because many loggers died from heavy branches that fell on their heads, deaths the Agropelter caused on purpose. The creature looked like a mix between an ape and a starving bear, with a thin but strong body covered in black fur. Its face showed an ash-gray pattern that looked like a skull, and its arms stretched out like powerful whips that could snap thick branches with ease. The Agropelter moved so quickly that most people never saw it clearly, only catching glimpses as it darted between trees. One famous story tells of a pioneer surveyor who the Agropelter caught and kept prisoner in its hollow tree. The beast fed the poor man nothing but raw fish until he finally managed to escape. This tale spread among workers in the woods, warning them to stay alert and never work alone near hollow trees. The Agropelter changed how lumber camps worked in the northern forests. Workers began checking trees for hollow spots before cutting them down, and they always worked in pairs for safety. Camp leaders taught new workers to listen for the sharp crack of breaking branches above their heads, a sound that meant an Agropelter might be ready to attack. Long ago, on an island in the Indian Ocean, lived the Almiraj, a magical creature that looked like a golden rabbit with one black horn on its head. This remarkable beast had the power to make all other animals run away in fear just by looking at it. The Almiraj lived on Dragon Island, where it shared its home with a fearsome dragon. The Almiraj stood out from normal rabbits in several ways. Its fur shone with a bright yellow color like sunlight on gold. The single black horn rose straight up from its forehead, sharp and dangerous. Though it had the soft, round body of a rabbit, its presence struck terror into the hearts of even the largest wild animals. The most famous story of the Almiraj tells how it came to belong to Alexander the Great, known in Arabic stories as Iskandar. The people of Dragon Island suffered because a huge dragon kept eating their farm animals. Iskandar helped them by feeding the dragon 2 oxen filled with sulfur and poison. After the dragon died, the grateful islanders gave him the Almiraj as a gift. The Almiraj shaped how people thought about the mix of beauty and danger in the natural world. Its rabbit-like appearance made it seem harmless, but its magical horn and frightening power reminded people that gentle looks could hide great strength. Stories about the Almiraj spread from Arabia through many lands, showing up in books and artwork for hundreds of years. In the lands of medieval Europe lived the Allocamelus, a strange beast that appeared in royal coats of arms and noble family crests. This creature combined the features of 2 common animals in an uncommon way, making it a perfect symbol for artists and storytellers who wanted to show both strength and humility. Noble families chose the Allocamelus for their banners because it stood out from regular animals. The Allocamelus had the head of a donkey, with long ears that stood straight up and a broad, gentle face. Its neck rose tall and proud like a camel's, leading to a large, humped body covered in thick fur. The beast walked on 4 sturdy legs that ended in camel's feet, giving it the power to cross any kind of land. Artists first drew the Allocamelus in books about family symbols called heraldry books. These books helped nobles pick special animals for their shields and flags. The creature became popular because it mixed the camel's ability to carry heavy loads with the donkey's patient, hard-working nature. The Allocamelus taught people that mixing different strengths could create something special. Noble families used it to show they had both the wisdom to work hard, like a donkey, and the endurance to carry on through hard times, like a camel. The creature reminded everyone that unusual combinations could make something more powerful than its separate parts. The Amarok walked alone through the icy lands of the Arctic, where the Inuit people lived. This giant wolf had the power to sense every secret in its realm, making it different from normal wolves that hunt in groups. The Inuit both feared and respected the Amarok because it punished those who broke hunting rules by walking alone at night. The Amarok stood taller than any normal wolf, with thick fur that blended into the snow and ice. Its eyes glowed like stars in the dark, and its tail was strong enough to knock a grown man to the ground. People said it could carry a full-grown reindeer in its mouth as easily as a normal wolf might carry a rabbit. One famous story tells of a small, weak boy who met the Amarok while seeking strength. The great wolf did not eat him, but instead helped him by wrestling with him each day. The wolf's magic pushed small bones from the boy's body that had kept him from growing strong. After many meetings with the Amarok, the boy became strong enough to fight 3 bears. The Amarok shaped how the Inuit lived and hunted. Hunters always worked in groups and stayed home after dark because of the wolf's presence. Parents taught their children about the Amarok to keep them safe, and its stories showed people the importance of following rules and respecting nature's power. Deep in ancient Mesopotamia lived Asag, a demon so fearsome that waters boiled at his touch. He held the power to join with mountains themselves, creating armies of rock demons as his children. The people feared Asag because his very presence brought burning heat that could cook fish alive in their rivers. Asag's form was so ugly that stories said looking at him could make people sick with fever. His body joined features of rock and flesh in ways that hurt the eyes, and wherever he walked, the ground cracked and steamed beneath his feet. The heat of his body turned cool streams into boiling pools. The most famous tale tells of how the hero god Ninurta fought Asag in an epic battle. Ninurta carried a magic weapon called Cherufe, a talking mace that gave him wise advice. Together, they faced Asag and his army of rock children in the mountains. After a mighty fight that shook the earth, Ninurta struck down the demon and saved the land from his burning touch. The story of Asag taught the people of Mesopotamia about the dangers of the harsh summer heat. When rivers ran low and the sun scorched the land, they remembered Asag's defeat and took hope. They believed that just as Ninurta had beaten back the demon of heat and drought, the cooler seasons would return to bring relief to their lands. In the deep forests of the Pacific Northwest lived Asin, a fearsome creature known as the Basket Woman. She had the power to move without making a sound, even through dry leaves and twigs. Parents warned their children about Asin because she hunted down boys and girls who didn't listen to their elders. Asin looked like a very tall old woman with long, tangled gray hair that hung over her face. She always carried a huge basket made of cedar wood on her back, and her fingers were as long as tree branches with sharp nails like thorns. Her eyes glowed yellow in the dark like a wolf's eyes, and she could smell children from far away. The most famous story tells of two children who stayed out after dark despite their mother's warnings. While they played near the forest edge, Asin crept up behind them without a sound. She scooped both children into her basket and began walking toward her cave. The clever children dropped small stones to mark their path, which helped their village tracker find and rescue them before Asin could eat them. The story of Asin changed how children behaved in the Pacific Northwest tribes. Young ones made sure to come home before dark and listened carefully to their parents' rules. At night, families stayed close to their fires and kept watch over their little ones, knowing that somewhere in the dark forest, Asin might be prowling with her empty basket. In the deep forests of Minnesota and Wisconsin, the Axehandle Hound hunted at night for its strange food. This dog-like creature only ate wooden axe handles left outside by careless workers. Local lumberjacks feared losing their tools to this hungry beast. The Axehandle Hound looked just like its name suggests. Its head was flat and sharp like an axe blade, while its long body looked like a wooden handle. Short legs carried it from camp to camp as it searched for food. One famous story tells how a group of lumberjacks tried to trick the hound by making axe handles from red oak wood. The beast hated the smell of red oak so much it stayed away from their camp forever. Other camps started doing the same thing to keep their tools safe. Workers began keeping their axes inside at night and watching their tools more carefully. They also told funny stories about the Axehandle Hound around their campfires, turning their fear into jokes that made the long workdays more fun. The Baku lived in ancient Japan, watching over people as they slept. This spirit had the special power to eat bad dreams, which made people both respect and fear it. The Japanese believed calling on the Baku could save them from nightmares, but they knew they must be careful not to call it too often. The Baku looked like several animals mixed into one strange creature. It had an elephant's trunk and tusks, a bear's thick body, a cow's tail, and a tiger's sharp claws. Some people carved its image into wood or stone and kept these carvings by their beds for protection. One famous story tells of a child who called the Baku 3 times after waking from a scary dream. The Baku came at once and ate the nightmare, letting the child sleep in peace. But the story warns that if the Baku stays hungry after eating a nightmare, it might also eat the person's good dreams and hopes. The Baku shaped how Japanese families dealt with bad dreams for hundreds of years. Parents taught their children to say, "Baku-san, come eat my dream," when they woke up scared. Many homes kept small Baku charms near their beds, but they remembered to call on the spirit only when truly needed. The ball-tailed cat roamed the thick forests of North America, from Canada down to Mexico. This rare big cat carried its most deadly weapon at the end of its tail, a heavy ball of bone and muscle that could crack a deer's skull in one hit. Native tribes both feared and respected these cats, as they hunted the same prey and could easily kill a person with their powerful tail strikes. The beast looked much like a mountain lion, with golden brown fur and a strong, muscular body. Its most striking feature was its unusual tail, which stretched longer than its body and ended in a round ball the size of a man's fist. Sharp eyes, like those of a normal cat, helped it spot prey in the dark woods, while its large paws let it move quietly through fallen leaves. One famous story tells of a young hunter who watched a ball-tailed cat hunt. The cat crept up on a group of deer, but instead of using its claws or teeth, it swung its tail like a whip. The heavy ball struck a buck's head with such force that it dropped dead on the spot. The hunter brought this tale back to his people, who then began watching these cats to learn new hunting skills. The ball-tailed cat shaped how many tribes hunted and fought. Warriors copied its patient stalking method, and some even made weapons that copied its tail's striking power. People believed that eating the meat near the tail would give them strength, though they rarely managed to kill one of these clever cats. Parents used stories about the ball-tailed cat to teach their children to stay alert in the woods and respect the power of nature. In the mountains of South France during the 1760s, a mysterious beast killed more than 100 people. The beast of Gévaudan hunted humans in broad daylight and showed no fear of weapons or groups. Even the king's best hunters could not stop its deadly attacks on farmers and children. The beast stood as tall as a young cow, with reddish-brown fur marked by dark stripes. Its large head looked like a greyhound's but with a wider mouth full of sharp teeth. Unlike normal wolves, it could leap over high walls and outrun horses. The king of France sent his best hunter, François Antoine, to kill the beast. After months of hunting, Antoine shot a huge wolf that he believed was the killer. The people celebrated, but soon the attacks began again, proving the real beast was still alive. Local people lived in fear for 3 years while the beast hunted. Children could not walk to school alone, and farmers carried weapons while working. Finally, a hunter named Jean Chastel shot and killed the real beast in 1767, ending its reign of terror. The dead creature puzzled doctors who studied it. While it looked somewhat like a wolf, its teeth and body were different from any known animal. To this day, no one knows if it was a huge wolf, a trained killer dog, or some other kind of beast. Deep in the forests of North America lurks a legendary being known as Bigfoot or Sasquatch. This massive creature stands between 6 and 9 feet tall and moves silently through dense woods. Native American tribes knew of this being long before modern reports began, with some seeing it as a guardian of the wilderness. Bigfoot has thick, dark hair covering its body, powerful shoulders, and arms that reach past its knees. Many people say it walks upright like a human, but moves with the strength of a bear. Its feet leave huge tracks in the mud, sometimes 2 feet long, which gave the creature its common name. The most famous encounter happened in 1967, when 2 men filmed a Bigfoot walking through Bluff Creek, California. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin captured less than a minute of shaky footage, showing a hair-covered figure striding away from them. This short film started heated debates that continue today about whether Bigfoot really exists. This creature has shaped how many people think about wilderness areas, especially in the Pacific Northwest. Some towns hold Bigfoot festivals, build museums, and even pass laws protecting the creature. In Washington state, several counties have made it illegal to harm Bigfoot, showing how deeply this legend has become part of local culture. Scientists say Bigfoot cannot be real, pointing to the lack of any bones or clear evidence. But the legend lives on through thousands of reported sightings, drawing tourists and researchers into the woods each year. The story of Bigfoot reminds us that even today, some corners of our world still hold mysteries. In the dark corners of old English homes lived Bloody Bones, a fearsome creature that punished bad children. Parents warned that this monster hid under stairs and inside closets, waiting to grab young ones who told lies or used bad words. The mere mention of its name struck fear into children's hearts, making them behave well and stay away from dangerous places. This creature took 2 horrible forms. Its head looked like a raw, skinless skull with sharp teeth and burning eyes. The rest of it appeared as a bloody skeleton that danced in the shadows, its bones stained red from past victims. Some said it could split into 2 parts, the biting head and the dancing bones. One famous tale tells of a man who spread cruel gossip about his neighbors. Late one night, while walking home alone, he heard the click of bones behind him. When he turned around, Bloody Bones grabbed him and tore off his head as punishment for his wicked tongue. People found only his headless body the next morning. The story of Bloody Bones spread from England across the ocean to America, where it became part of Southern folktales. Parents used it to teach children about lying, swearing, and staying away from dangerous ponds. The creature found its way into slave stories too, showing how fears can move between different groups of people and change over time. The Bluecap looked like a floating blue light, about the size of a fist, that moved through dark mine shafts without making any sound. Unlike regular flames that flicker and die, these spirits kept their steady glow as they drifted through the tunnels. When they settled on mining tools or coal carts, they gave off a soft, cool light that lit up the darkness. One famous story tells of a group of miners who left a fair day's pay in a quiet corner of the mine for their spirit helper. The Bluecap moved coal carts all night long, doing the work of 3 strong men. But when the miners tried to reward it with extra coins the next day, the spirit stopped helping until they went back to paying the normal wage. The miners shaped their daily work around the Bluecap's habits and rules. They kept a corner of each mine clean and quiet as a space for the spirit, spoke to it with respect, and always paid it fairly for its work. In return, the Bluecap became a trusted partner in the dangerous world underground, helping the miners work safely and find the richest deposits of coal. Bluecaps lived in the coal mines of northern England, where they appeared as small blue flames that could guide miners to rich mineral deposits. These mine spirits earned the deep respect of workers because they would warn them about dangerous cave-ins and help with the heavy work underground. The Bluecap looked like a floating blue light, about the size of a fist, that moved through dark mine shafts without making any sound. Unlike regular flames that flicker and die, these spirits kept their steady glow as they drifted through the tunnels. When they settled on mining tools or coal carts, they gave off a soft, cool light that lit up the darkness. Near the German city of Brunswick stood a mighty bronze lion made over 800 years ago. This proud statue showed the power of Duke Henry the Lion, who ruled the lands of Saxony and Bavaria. People respected the lion as the first large bronze statue made in northern Europe since ancient Roman times. The statue stands nearly 6 feet tall and 9 feet long, its bronze surface once covered in gleaming gold. Its face shows a mix of power and calm, with an open mouth and a strong, royal pose that makes the lion look both fierce and noble. A famous story tells how Duke Henry met a real lion while traveling to Holy Lands. The lion fought a dragon, and Henry helped the lion win the battle. The grateful lion followed Henry home like a faithful dog. When Henry died, the lion lay down on his grave and died from sadness. The Brunswick Lion became so important that the city put it on their official seal and coins. Even today, the lion remains the symbol of Brunswick, though the original statue now stays safe inside a castle. A perfect copy stands in the old spot, where people still gather to admire it and tell its tales. On the Isle of Man lived the fearsome Buggane, a giant shapeshifter who could tear roofs from churches with its massive strength. The monster haunted caves near the sea and punished both lazy villagers and those who offended the local fairies. It had one weakness: it could not cross water or walk on holy ground. The Buggane's true form was a huge black-haired beast with glowing torch-like eyes and sharp tusks. Sometimes it appeared as a large black calf, or as a man with a horse's ears and hooves, or even as a giant with bull's horns and gleaming teeth. At St. Trinian's church, a Buggane made a powerful enemy. Angry at St. Trinian for saving a ship from its storm, the monster swore the saint would never have a complete church on the island. 3 times the people built a roof, and 3 times the Buggane tore it off. The roofless church still stands today. People on the Isle of Man learned to be careful with their daily tasks, fearing the Buggane's judgment. Stories tell of a woman who escaped death only by cutting loose her apron when the Buggane tried to throw her into a waterfall for baking bread after sunset. These tales taught people to work hard and respect both the monsters and fairies of their island. In ancient Korea lived the Bulgasari, a monster that ate metal and grew larger with each bite. This strange beast began as a tiny figure made of rice, but soon grew into a giant that no weapon could stop. People feared it because their strongest swords and arrows only made it stronger. The Bulgasari looked like many animals mixed into one huge beast. It had parts of a bear, elephant, rhino, tiger, and bull all joined together. The creature grew bigger and bigger as it devoured more metal, until it towered over villages. A Buddhist monk first made the Bulgasari while hiding from soldiers during a time when his religion was against the law. He shaped it from rice grains and fed it needles, watching it grow. When the government sent warriors to kill it, the beast ate their weapons and grew even stronger. The soldiers tried using fire, but the Bulgasari just picked up the flames and burned down a village. Some people say Buddhist monks finally found a way to stop the Bulgasari, while others believe it still wanders Korea today, eating metal and growing ever larger. Parents still tell their children about the Bulgasari to teach them that taking wrong actions can create problems too big to control. The cactus cat roamed through the deserts of the American Southwest, preying on tall cacti with its razor-sharp spines. This unique cat-like creature searched for fermented cactus juice to drink, making it nature's own moonshiner. People feared meeting it at night when it hunted for its strange meals. Looking like a mix between a bobcat and a cactus, this creature had a coat of sharp thorns instead of fur. Long spines grew from its legs, and its thick tail split into branches covered in armor. The beast's thorny body protected it from desert threats. Each night, the cactus cat slashed open tall cacti with its spiky legs and tail, leaving deep cuts in the plants. The juice would leak out and sit in the desert heat. Several nights later, the cat returned to drink the juice after it had turned into a strong alcohol. Desert travelers learned to watch for the signs of a cactus cat: slashed cacti oozing juice and the sound of wild yowling in the night. Some said you could hear the cats fighting after drinking too much fermented juice, their thorny bodies clashing in the darkness. The Camahueto lived on Chiloé, a group of islands near Chile. This mighty creature combined the strength of a bull with the magic of a unicorn, showing its power through a single golden horn that could heal any sickness. Local people both feared and sought the Camahueto, as its powerful horn could either harm them or save their lives when used in medicine. The Camahueto looked like a young bull with thick reddish-brown fur that shone in the sunlight. Its most striking feature was the twisted golden horn growing from its forehead, which glowed like a flame at night. Unlike normal bulls, it had webbed feet that helped it swim between islands, and its eyes glowed with an eerie blue light that sailors could spot from far away. The most famous story tells of a brave healer who tracked a Camahueto to its seaside cave. The healer threw a magical rope around its neck, but the beast fought back so hard it caused huge waves that flooded the shore. After a long struggle, the healer managed to cut off just a small piece of the horn, which he used to cure a whole village of a deadly fever. The Camahueto shaped how island people lived their daily lives. Farmers built special fences to protect their cattle from the creature's mighty charges, while healers spent years learning the secret ways to find and safely gather pieces of its horn. People also learned to listen for its distinctive cry, which sounded like thunder mixed with a bull's call, warning them to stay away from the shore during storms. In ancient Greece lived the Calydonian Boar, a monster sent by the angry goddess Artemis to destroy farms and vineyards. This huge beast had burning red eyes, knife-sharp tusks, and bristles hard as iron spikes. It forced whole towns to hide behind their walls as it turned their lands to waste. The boar breathed out lightning that burned the fields, and hot foam dripped from its massive shoulders. Its huge muscles made its neck thick as a tree trunk, and its roars shook the earth. Even the bravest warriors feared its terrible strength. When King Oeneus forgot to honor Artemis in his harvest gifts, she sent this boar as punishment. The king called all the great heroes of Greece to hunt it, including a woman named Atalanta. She shot the boar first with her arrow, but when men tried to deny her the prize, fights broke out that led to many deaths. The story taught Greeks to respect their gods and warned about the price of pride. People kept the boar's hide in a temple for hundreds of years, and its huge tusks went to Rome as treasure. Even today, people dig up old vases and cups with pictures of the famous hunt painted on them. In medieval England, the Calygreyhound appeared on noble family shields as a creature of impossible beauty and strength. This beast combined parts of many animals into one magical form, showing the power of the De Vere family who used it as their symbol. No other noble house claimed this unique creature as their own. The Calygreyhound looked like nature had mixed together its favorite animals. It had the fierce head of a wild cat and the graceful body of a deer. Its front feet showed eagle claws while its back legs ended in lion paws or ox hooves. The creature carried proud antlers on its head, and a lion's tail swept behind it. Artists drew this beast in many ways, sometimes giving it eagle wings for flight, yet they always kept its main features the same: the cat head, deer body, and mixed limbs. The Calygreyhound stood for speed and power, two things that rulers wanted people to think of when they saw their shield. The De Vere family used this creature to show they were special among the nobles of England. Unlike dragons or unicorns that many families used, the Calygreyhound belonged to them alone. It helped people remember their name and power, even if they could not read the words on their shield. In ancient Greece lived a sacred deer known as the Ceryneian Hind, a magical creature bigger than a bull. This female deer had golden antlers that shone in the sun, and hooves made of bronze that sparkled as it ran. The goddess Artemis chose this special deer as her own, making it one of the most holy animals in the land. The hind looked unlike any normal deer. Its coat showed many pretty spots, and even though it was female, it carried proud golden antlers like a male deer. When it ran, its bronze hooves flashed in the light, and some stories say it could even breathe fire. The great hero Heracles had to catch this deer alive as one of his 12 great tasks. He chased it for a whole year, following it through many lands to the far north where snow never melts. At last, he caught the deer near a river called Ladon, being careful not to harm it since it belonged to Artemis. The deer changed how people saw the world around them. Its golden antlers and bronze hooves showed that magical things could exist in nature. Farmers who saw it running through their fields left offerings for Artemis, hoping she would protect their crops through her sacred deer. Deep within the volcanoes of Chile lived the Cherufe, a mighty being of fire and stone. This creature controlled the power of volcanoes and could cause earthquakes at will. The Mapuche people, who lived in south-central Chile, both feared and respected the Cherufe because it could bring destruction to their lands through volcanic eruptions. The Cherufe looked like a human made of glowing rocks and flowing lava. Its body burned as hot as melted rock, and its eyes glowed like flames in the dark. When it moved through its volcanic home, the ground shook and steam rose from its footsteps, warning people that danger was near. The most famous story of the Cherufe tells of its hunger for human flesh, especially young women who had never married. The people believed that to stop the Cherufe from causing volcanic eruptions, they needed to give it what it wanted. They would bring a young woman to the volcano as an offering, hoping to calm the fierce creature's anger. This belief shaped how the Mapuche people lived near volcanoes. They watched for signs of the Cherufe's anger, like rumbling sounds or smoke from the mountaintops. When these warnings appeared, village leaders would meet to decide how to keep their people safe from the creature's wrath. The Cherufe taught the people to respect the deadly power of volcanoes and to stay alert for signs of danger. In ancient India and Ethiopia, a fearsome beast called the Crocotta hunted both humans and dogs alike. This monster could copy any human voice perfectly, using this skill to lure people from their homes at night. No weapon could harm its strong body. The Crocotta looked like several animals mixed into one strange form. It stood as tall as a donkey, with the thick neck of a lion and the strong legs of a stag. Its head looked like a badger's, and its mouth could open all the way back to its ears, showing a solid ridge of bone instead of normal teeth. Ancient stories tell of the Crocotta calling out to people by name in the dark. When curious victims came to find the source of the familiar voice, the beast would attack and eat them. The Crocotta ran faster than horses and fought harder than bulls, making escape nearly impossible. In Rome, the Emperor Antoninus Pius showed off a real Crocotta to amazed crowds. The beast became so famous that people believed its eyes turned into magic gems after death. These gems could tell the future if someone placed them under their tongue. Today, we know these tales likely came from early travelers' stories about the spotted hyena. Like the Crocotta, hyenas have strong jaws and can make sounds that sound like human laughter or speech. They also dig up graves and hunt in the dark, adding to their scary image. Deep in the Amazon rainforest of Brazil lives the Curupira, a powerful forest guardian who protects animals and trees from greedy hunters. This creature's most striking feature is its backward-facing feet, which it uses to create confusing trails that lead hunters in circles. The Curupira became the first magical being ever written about in Brazil's history, and today it remains one of the most famous forest spirits in South American stories. The Curupira looks like a small man with bright red-orange hair that can burst into flames. Its most unusual feature is its feet, which point backward instead of forward when it walks. Many people say they have seen the Curupira riding through the forest on the back of a wild pig, just like its cousin spirit, the Kaipora. One famous story tells of how the Curupira stops bad hunters who kill too many animals. When it finds these hunters in the forest, it makes a strange, high whistle that echoes through the trees. The whistle confuses the hunters and makes them lose their way. Some hunters have gone mad from walking in circles for days, following the backward footprints that lead nowhere. The Curupira's presence changed how people behaved in the forest. Hunters began leaving gifts of tobacco and strong drinks on forest paths to keep the spirit happy. They also made new rules about hunting: never kill more animals than needed, and never harm animal mothers caring for their babies. In the state of São Paulo, people respected the Curupira so much that they made it the official protector of their forests and wildlife. In the swamps between Maine and Michigan lived the Dungavenhooter, a strange beast that turned its prey to dust with one swing of its mighty tail. This fearsome monster had no mouth, but breathed in its food through two huge nostrils, making it one of the oddest hunters in North American folktales. Loggers and travelers feared this creature most when walking alone through marshy areas at night. The Dungavenhooter looked much like a giant alligator, but its head had some key differences. Where a normal mouth should be, there was only smooth, scaly skin. Its nostrils were as big as dinner plates, and its tail was flat and heavy like a wooden board. The beast's eyes glowed yellow in the dark, helping it spot victims from far away. The most famous story about the Dungavenhooter tells of its clever hunting style. The beast would hide behind bushes near paths that drunk men used to walk home from taverns. With one quick strike of its powerful tail, it would smash an unlucky victim into a fine mist. Then, using its massive nostrils like a vacuum, it would sniff up every last bit of its prey. People who lived near the swamps changed their habits because of the Dungavenhooter. They stopped walking alone through marshlands after dark, and those who drank at taverns made sure to travel home in groups. Parents used tales of the beast to warn children about wandering too close to dangerous swamps and to teach them about the risks of drinking too much. The dwarfs of Germanic folklore lived deep inside mountains and stones, where they worked as master craftsmen who could make magical treasures. These beings possessed great wisdom and skill with metal and gems, but they did not share their riches freely. People both feared and respected dwarfs for their power to create amazing things and their habit of keeping to themselves. A dwarf looked much like a human, but could be told apart by key features. They had very pale skin from living underground, and their eyes glowed in the dark like a cat's. Most dwarfs grew long beards, and dressed in fine clothes they made themselves. Though some stories say they were short, many tell of dwarfs who could change their size at will. The most famous tale tells of a dwarf named Alberich, who guarded a vast treasure. A hero named Siegfried fought him and won a magic cloak that made its wearer invisible. Though Alberich was strong enough to fight 12 men, Siegfried beat him and forced him to serve as his helper. The dwarf had no choice but to obey and share his wealth. Common people changed their ways because they believed in dwarfs. Miners left small gifts of food near cave openings to keep the dwarfs happy. Parents told children never to enter strange caves or talk to small men near stones, fearing the dwarfs might steal them away. Some folks even believed they could hear the sound of dwarf hammers working deep under the hills at night. When the sun rose each morning, dwarfs had to hide inside their mountain homes or turn to stone. This weakness gave humans some safety, as dwarfs could only come out at night to trade or cause trouble. People said a dwarf caught in sunlight would freeze forever, becoming part of the rocky landscape they called home. In the dense forests of Flores, Indonesia, lived small human-like beings called the Ebu Gogo, whose name means old glutton because they would eat anything they found. These fast runners stood as tall as a child, but showed great strength when they moved through the jungle. Local people feared these creatures because they would steal food and try to kidnap children. The Ebu Gogo looked both human and wild at once. They had flat, wide noses and large mouths set in broad faces, with hair covering their whole body. The female Ebu Gogo had very long breasts that hung down low. These beings could copy human speech like a parrot, but also spoke in their own strange mumbling language. One famous story tells how villagers finally drove away the Ebu Gogo. The people gave these creatures palm fiber to make clothes, knowing the Ebu Gogo would take it back to their cave. Once the creatures went inside with the fiber, the villagers threw fire into the cave. Most of the Ebu Gogo died in the flames, though some say one pair escaped into the forest. The Ebu Gogo changed how people lived in the forests of Flores. Parents warned their children never to wander alone, telling stories of how even young kids could trick these simple-minded beings. Villagers began blocking their cave entrances with stones, and kept fires burning at night to keep the creatures away. Some people today still avoid certain caves, believing a few Ebu Gogo might still hide in the deepest parts of the forest. The Ennedi Tiger, a mysterious rock art creature, lived in the caves of the Ennedi region in Chad, Africa. This powerful being combined the strength of big cats with strange magical features that set it apart from real animals. Ancient people painted it on cave walls to show their respect for its role as a guardian of sacred places. The creature appeared as a huge cat, 3 times bigger than a normal tiger, with special marks covering its body. Its head showed both tiger and human features, while its tail split into 3 parts near the end. Artists always painted it in red ochre, a natural red color from the rocks, and gave it spots like a leopard but stripes like a tiger. One famous story tells how the Ennedi Tiger protected a group of hunters lost in a sandstorm. The great beast led them to a hidden cave where water flowed from the rocks. When evil spirits tried to trap the hunters inside the cave, the tiger fought them off with its 3-tailed whip and mighty roar. The people of ancient Ennedi believed this creature watched over their water sources, which meant life or death in the desert. They left small gifts of food near cave paintings of the tiger before taking water from springs and wells. Hunters asked for its blessing before searching for food, marking their spears with red ochre to honor it. The Erymanthian Boar lived in the thick forests of Mount Erymanthus in ancient Greece, where it made its home near a vast marsh. This massive wild pig attacked local farms and destroyed crops with its fierce strength and deadly tusks. The people of Arcadia lived in fear of the beast, as it would storm down from the mountains without warning to tear through their lands. The boar stood as tall as 3 normal pigs and had thick, shaggy fur that bristled when it charged. Its huge tusks curved up from its foaming mouth like sharp ivory knives, and its small eyes burned with wild fury. Blood often stained its bristles from the wounds it gave to those who tried to stop its rampages. The greatest story of the Erymanthian Boar tells of its battle with the hero Heracles. The mighty hero chased the beast through the woods with loud shouts until it fled into deep snow. There, Heracles caught the tired boar, wrapped it in strong chains, and carried it alive on his shoulders to King Eurystheus. The king feared the boar so much that he hid inside a bronze pot when he saw it. The farmers of ancient Arcadia told their children about the boar to warn them about the dangers that lived in the wild mountains. They left offerings at temples of Artemis, the goddess of wild animals, hoping she would keep the boar and other fierce beasts away from their lands. Some people claimed the boar's giant tusks could still be seen in temples many years later, though others said these stories weren't true. In ancient Rome, fauns lived deep in wild forests and sacred groves. These magical beings could shift between helping and tricking humans who walked through their woods. People both feared and respected fauns because they could curse travelers with madness or guide lost souls back to safety. The faun looked like a mix of human and goat, with a person's upper body and a goat's lower half. It had curved horns on its head, pointed ears that could turn toward any sound, and legs covered in thick fur ending in split hooves. Most fauns stood as tall as a grown man, with faces that showed both wisdom and mischief. One famous story tells of a faun who found a traveler lost in a winter storm. While other fauns wanted to lead the man in circles until he froze, this kind faun lit a path through the trees with magic lights. The traveler followed these lights to find warmth and shelter, learning that not all wild creatures mean harm. Farmers and traders often left small gifts for fauns near forest paths, cups of wine, fresh bread, or sweet honey. They believed this kept the fauns happy and stopped them from playing tricks. People also thought fauns protected the woods and helped plants grow, so they tried to stay on good terms with these forest spirits. The Romans believed fauns answered to Faunus, their great god of wild places and growing things. Unlike his tricky forest servants, Faunus used his powers to help crops grow and keep farm animals healthy. This link made people see fauns as important helpers who connected the human world with nature's magic. In the dark halls of European science, a creature made from dead body parts became one of the most famous monsters in history. Built by scientist Victor Frankenstein in his lab, this giant being could think, feel, and speak like a human. People feared it because no one had ever seen anything like it before, a dead person brought back to life. The monster stood 8 feet tall, as high as a modern door frame. Its yellow skin stretched thin over strong muscles, showing the veins beneath like roads on a map. Black hair flowed from its head, and its teeth shone white like pearls, but its pale eyes and black lips made it look deeply unnatural. The creature's most famous tale tells of its search for love and friendship. At first, it lived near a poor family and learned to speak by listening to them. When it tried to make friends with them, they ran away in fear. This rejection filled the monster with anger, leading it to kill several people close to its maker, Frankenstein. The monster's story changed how people thought about science and its limits. It made them ask if humans should try to create life, or if some areas of science might be too dangerous. The tale also showed how harshly people often treat those who look different from them. Even today, many use the word Frankenstein to warn about the dangers of science going too far. Within the mines and mountains of medieval Europe lived the Gnome, a small but clever earth spirit with the power to move through solid rock as easily as humans move through air. These underground dwellers guarded precious metals and gems, sometimes helping miners find rich deposits of silver and gold. Miners both respected and feared gnomes, knowing these spirits could either lead them to wealth or play dangerous tricks on those who showed disrespect. Gnomes stood about 18 inches tall, looking like tiny old men dressed in miners' clothes. They wore leather aprons around their waists and pointed caps on their heads. Their faces showed the wrinkles of age, but their eyes sparkled with mischief and wisdom born from centuries of living beneath the earth. The most famous tale of gnomes comes from the Swiss village of Pleurs, where these spirits blessed the local gold mine by pouring liquid gold into its veins. The villagers grew rich from this gift, but their wealth soon led to greed and bad behavior. Angry at how the humans had changed, the gnomes caused a great landslide that destroyed the entire village in 1618, showing their power to both give and take away fortune. The gnomes shaped how miners worked and lived their daily lives. Miners listened carefully for the knocking sounds gnomes made, believing these warned them about dangerous areas or pointed the way to rich veins of ore. They left small gifts for the gnomes and spoke politely about them, hoping to win their favor. Many miners refused to curse or act badly while underground, fearing the gnomes would punish them by leading them astray or causing cave-ins. The gold-digging ants lived in the sandy deserts of ancient India. These giant insects were the size of foxes and could find gold buried deep in the sand. People both feared and sought these creatures because the ants would attack anyone who tried to steal their gold, but the gold they dug up was more valuable than any other treasure. The ants looked like normal ants but grew as big as dogs, with thick fur covering their bodies. They moved quickly through the desert, using their powerful legs to dig deep tunnels in the sand. Their huge jaws could tear through earth and rock, bringing golden treasures to the surface as they built their homes. The most famous story tells of how local people would wait until the hottest part of the day to steal gold from the ants. During this time, the ants would hide underground to escape the heat. The gold hunters would rush in with fast camels, grab as much gold as they could carry, and race away before the ants could catch them. If the ants caught up to the thieves, they would attack both rider and camel. The tales of these gold-digging ants changed how ancient peoples searched for gold. Hunters would track the ants from far away, watching where they dug their nests. They created maps showing where the giant ants lived and passed these secrets down through their families. Many years later, travelers discovered that the stories might have been about large, furry marmots living in the mountains between India and Pakistan. These animals did dig up gold dust while making their homes, and local people still collect gold from their burrows today, but without the danger of being chased by giant ants. The Goldhorn lived high in the mountains of Slovenia, watching over the peaks of Mount Triglav with eyes that gleamed like starlight. This mighty white chamois buck bore horns of pure gold that held the power to unlock hidden treasure within the mountains. Both hunters and common folk spoke of the beast with wonder and fear, for its golden horns could bring either great fortune or deadly fate to those who dared pursue it. Like fresh snow given form, the Goldhorn's white coat shone against the rocky peaks where it made its home. Its horns curved up toward the sky like twin golden crescents, catching the sun's light and throwing it back in blinding flashes. The creature moved with the grace of falling water, leaping across gaps that would stop even the most sure-footed mountain goat. The most famous tale tells of a young hunter who sought the Goldhorn's treasure to win back his love from a wealthy merchant. After shooting and wounding the beast, he chased it high into the peaks, where red flowers sprouted from each drop of the Goldhorn's blood. Before the hunter could claim his prize, the Goldhorn ate one of these magic blooms, which healed its wounds and filled it with new strength. The hunter's greed led to his doom, as the renewed Goldhorn charged at him with its gleaming horns. Blinded by their golden light, the hunter lost his footing and fell from the mountain to his death in the river far below. After this, the people of the valleys learned to leave the Goldhorn in peace, seeing it as a guardian of the mountains that would punish those driven by greed. The golem lived in the Jewish quarter of Prague during times of great danger for the city's people. This giant being made of clay came to life through holy words and magic symbols written on paper, which gave it the power to protect the Jewish community from harm. The people both feared and respected the golem, because while it kept them safe, its great strength could also bring destruction, if not controlled properly. Standing as tall as two men, the golem's body was rough and brown, like the clay of the Vltava river that flows through Prague. Its eyes glowed with an inner light, but its face showed no feeling, and though it could walk and follow orders, it could not speak. The creature moved with heavy steps that shook the ground, leaving deep footprints wherever it went. Rabbi Lo created the golem to guard his people from attacks in the night. Each evening, the golem would patrol the streets of the Jewish quarter, using its mighty strength to stop anyone who meant harm to the community. Every Friday at sunset, Rabbi Lo had to remove the magic words from the golem's mouth to make it rest for the holy day of Sabbath, but one time he forgot. Without its weekly rest, the golem began to destroy the very streets it was meant to protect. It broke down doors, crushed market stalls, and scared the people who once felt safe in its presence. Rabbi Lo rushed to stop his creation, pulling the magic paper from its mouth. The golem fell apart, turning back into lifeless clay, and the people learned that even helpers need rest and care. Today, many say the golem still lies in pieces in the attic of Prague's old new synagogue, waiting to be woken if its people ever need protection again. The Jews of Prague kept this story alive through the years, as a reminder that power must come with wisdom, and that even the strongest protector needs rules to follow. Beneath the rocky earth of South Africa's Richtersveld region lives a mighty serpent known as the Grootslang. This giant snake guards caves filled with sparkling diamonds and precious treasures. Local people say it has watched over its riches since the beginning of time, and those who dare to steal from its lair never return. The Grootslang stretches as long as 5 cars placed end to end, leaving tracks wider than a tall man's height in the sand. Some stories tell of diamonds that gleam in its eye sockets like burning stars. The beast moves through underground tunnels that reach from deep caves all the way to the rushing Orange River, letting it appear and strike without warning. The most famous tale of the Grootslang comes from the Wonder Hole, a deep cave that drops straight down for 60 feet before splitting into many paths. A brave treasure hunter once went down into this pit using ropes and cables. He found a wide ledge where tunnel mouths opened like black doors, but when bats flew at his face, he dropped his light and had to climb back up empty-handed. The smell of sulfur followed him out, along with stories of the great snake that waited in the darkness below. The Grootslang's power shaped how people lived in the Richtersveld. Farmers kept their cattle away from the riverbanks where the snake might strike. Treasure seekers stayed clear of certain caves, fearing its wrath. Even today, when people see the mighty waterfalls at Augrebis, they whisper about the snake that coils around mountains of gold in the deep pools below, guarding its treasures for all time. The Hibagon roams the thick forests of Mount Hiba in western Japan. This large, ape-like creature first caught people's attention in the 1970s when it left strange footprints in the snow. Local farmers and hunters feared the hibagon because it could move silently through the trees and watched them from hiding spots in the dense woods. The creature stands about 5 feet tall, with dark brown or black fur covering its whole body. Its face looks somewhat human, but with glowing red eyes that shine in the dark. People who have seen the hibagon say it walks on 2 legs like a person, but its arms hang much longer than human arms, reaching past its knees. One famous story tells of a truck driver who met the hibagon on a mountain road in 1972. The creature stepped out of the forest and stood in front of his truck, staring at him with its bright red eyes. The driver said the hibagon beat its chest and made loud howling sounds before running back into the woods. The hibagon changed how people lived around Mount Heba. Farmers began working their fields in groups instead of alone, and hunters carried cameras with them, hoping to prove the creature was real. Some people even said they found strange hair and footprints, which made more people come to the mountain to look for the mysterious beast. Local officials set up teams to search for the hibagon, but they never found solid proof it existed. Still, many people avoid walking alone in Mount Heba's forests at night, and parents tell their children to stay close to home when the sun starts to set. The story of the hibagon remains an important part of the area's culture, showing how deeply this creature touched people's lives. The Hippolectrion lived in ancient Greece, where it roamed both the land and sky. This strange beast combined the front half of a horse with the back half of a giant rooster, giving it the power to both gallop and fly. Greek warriors respected the Hippolectrion for its mix of horse-like speed and rooster-like watchfulness, making it a perfect guard for their camps and homes. The creature stood as tall as a war horse, with the proud neck and strong legs of a stallion. From its middle backward, soft feathers covered its body, ending in a rooster's tail that curved up toward the sky. Its wings spread wide like a rooster's, but were much larger and stronger, letting it lift its heavy horse body into the air. One famous tale tells of a Hippolectrion that saved a sleeping Greek army from a night attack. The creature's rooster instincts made it crow at midnight when it spotted enemy soldiers sneaking toward the camp. Its horse-like stamping then woke the Greek warriors just in time to grab their weapons and fight back. The Hippolectrion shaped how Greek soldiers planned their defense. They carved its image on their shields and drew it on their tent posts, hoping it would keep them safe. Farmers also placed clay figures of the beast near their chicken coops and stables, believing it would protect both their horses and roosters with its mixed powers. The hodog stalked the forests of Wisconsin, where settlers first spotted it in the late 1800s. This fearsome beast combined the strength of a bull with the spikes of a dinosaur and the fierce hunting skills of a big cat. Local people feared the hodog because they believed it was born from the angry spirits of mistreated oxen, seeking revenge on those who had been cruel to animals. The creature stood as tall as a horse, with thick legs ending in sharp claws that could tear through tree trunks. Its head looked like a mix between a frog and an elephant, with a wide grinning mouth full of sharp teeth. Along its back, a row of curved spines stuck up like hooks, and its long tail ended in spear-like points that could slash through the air. Eugene Shepard, a local logger who knew the woods well, claimed to catch a hodog in 1896. He said he and his friends used special sleeping gas on a long pole to knock out the beast in its cave. Shepard then showed the creature at the county fair, where it drew huge crowds who came to see it move and growl behind its cage. The story of the hodog changed how people in Rhinelander, Wisconsin saw their town. They made the creature their mascot, putting its picture on signs and buildings. Today, a big statue of the hodog stands in front of the town hall, and many local shops and events use its name. The beast that once scared people now brings pride and visitors to the town. The homunculus lived in the secret rooms of European alchemists from the Middle Ages to the 1700s. These tiny beings came to life through a mix of magic and early science, standing no taller than a human hand. Alchemists both feared and wanted these small creatures because they could show the future and held the secrets of turning common metals into gold. The homunculus looked like a perfect small person, but its skin glowed with an odd green light. Its head seemed too big for its little body, and its eyes shone like bits of glass in the dark. The creature moved in quick, jerky steps like a puppet without strings, and its voice sounded like whispers through a reed. One famous tale tells of an alchemist named Wagner who made a homunculus to learn the secrets of life itself. The tiny being grew stronger each day and began to outsmart its maker. It learned every secret in Wagner's books while he slept, then slipped away into the night, taking all his knowledge with it. Common people believed homunculi brought both help and harm to their makers. These small creatures could find lost things, heal the sick, and speak with spirits. But they also tricked their masters, stole their wealth, and shared sacred secrets with strangers. Many alchemists wrote warnings about making homunculi, saying the price of their knowledge was too high. The Hydra made its home in the swamps of ancient Greece, where it grew new heads each time one was cut off. This giant snake-like beast had 9 heads to start, and each one could spit deadly poison. People feared the Hydra because it killed whole villages of people, and no weapon could destroy it. The monster's body stretched as long as 8 tall trees, covered in scales harder than stone. Its main head glowed with a golden light, while the other heads were dark as night, and had eyes that shone like red fire. Each neck moved like a whip, letting the heads strike from all sides at once. The greatest story of the Hydra tells of its fight with Hercules, a hero known for his strength. Hercules found that each time he cut off one head, 2 more grew in its place. He solved this problem by burning each neck after he cut it, stopping new heads from growing. In the end, he buried the last head, which could not die, under a huge rock. Greek people told stories of the Hydra to warn about problems that seem to grow worse when you try to fix them. They also used its poison on their arrows and spoke of its blood as both a deadly poison and a healing medicine. Mothers would tell children to stay away from swamps and lakes where such monsters might live. In medieval Europe, imps roamed the shadows as tiny magical beings who loved to cause trouble. These creatures held the power to trick humans and play harmful pranks. While not as mighty as demons or as beautiful as fairies, imps earned respect through their clever minds and quick actions. Imps stood no taller than a child, with dark features and wild expressions on their faces. Like leaves blown by the wind, they moved fast and without warning. Their small size let them hide in corners, behind trees, or even inside common objects like bottles and swords. The most famous imp story comes from Lincoln Cathedral in England, where 2 imps snuck in to wreck the church. As they broke things and caused chaos, a tiny angel appeared and faced them. When one imp threw a rock at the angel, she turned him to stone. Today, visitors can still see the frozen imp high up in the church walls. People both feared and felt sorry for these creatures. Imps often felt lonely and played pranks to get human attention, much like children who misbehaved to be noticed. Some imps became helpers to witches, acting as spies and message carriers. Others granted wishes to humans who caught them, but these wishes often led to trouble since imps could not stop their love of mischief. The jackalope roams the western plains of North America, where it combines the speed of a rabbit with the fierce horns of an antelope. This clever creature can copy human voices so well that cowboys often heard them singing around campfires at night. People both feared and admired these beings for their mix of cute and deadly features. A jackalope looks like a large brown rabbit with sharp, branching antlers growing from its head. Its strong back legs let it jump high and run fast, while its long ears catch every sound in the wild. Most stand as tall as a small dog, with antlers that spread as wide as a man's hand. The most famous tale of the jackalope began in the town of Douglas, Wyoming, where 2 brothers who stuffed animals for a living made the first known mount in the 1930s. They sold their creation to a local hotel for $10, and soon the legend spread across America. Hotels, bars, and shops began showing off their own mounted jackalopes. The jackalope shaped how people in Wyoming saw themselves and their home. The town of Douglas built an 8-foot statue of the creature and began selling fake hunting permits as a joke. They made the hunting season one impossible day, June 31st, and told hunters they could only catch jackalopes by offering them whiskey, their favorite drink. These crafty beasts left such a mark on local culture that Wyoming tried 3 times to make the jackalope their official makeup animal, though the law never passed. Today, the creature appears on lottery tickets, in movies, games, and stories, showing how a simple idea can grow into a lasting legend that brings joy to many people. The Jotun lived in the frozen lands of Norse myth, towering over mountains as giants of frost and stone. These mighty beings held the power to shape the very earth, creating valleys with their footsteps and mountains with their weapons. The first gods both fought and feared the Jotun, who ruled the world before Odin and his family claimed it as their own. Each Jotun stood as tall as many pine trees stacked together, with skin like ice or rough stone. Their eyes glowed like the northern lights, and their voices rumbled like thunder across the land. Some looked almost human but grew larger than houses, while others had many heads or limbs made of living rock. The most famous tale tells of the Jotun named Ymir, whose body became the world itself. Odin and his brothers killed Ymir, then used his flesh to make the earth, his blood to fill the seas, his bones to build mountains, and his hair to grow into forests. His skull became the dome of the sky, held up by 4 dwarves at each corner of the world. The Norse people watched the mountains and glaciers for signs of Jotun activity, believing these giants caused earthquakes and harsh winters. Farmers left out offerings of food to keep the Jotun from destroying their fields with frost, while sailors watched for giant hands reaching from waves during storms. The stories of Jotun taught people to respect the raw power of nature and remember that even gods must work to keep chaos in check. The Junjudi haunts the thick bushland of southeast Queensland, where this small but mighty spirit shows off its amazing strength. These beings can lift huge rocks and bend thick tree trunks as easily as a child picks flowers. People both respect and fear the Junjudi because no weapon can harm it, and it often plays tricks on humans who enter its territory. Standing no taller than a child's waist, the Junjudi looks like a small man covered in dark brown hair from head to toe. Its eyes glow yellow in the dark like a dingo's eyes, and its feet point backward instead of forward. Despite its size, its muscles bulge like twisted roots, showing its supernatural power. One famous story tells of a hunter who laughed at warnings about the Junjudi and camped in its favorite spot. The angry spirit lifted the man's heavy wagon with one hand and threw it into a billabong, a deep water hole. It then chased the hunter through the bush all night, turning him around until the man found himself back at the same billabong 7 times. Aboriginal people of the region carefully watch for signs of the Junjudi when traveling through the bush. Parents teach children to listen for its whistle, which sounds like a bird but comes from the wrong direction. Hunters leave small gifts of food near certain trees to keep peace with the spirit, and no one camps in places where backward footprints appear in the morning dew. The Gévaudan lived in the mountains of southwest China, where it became known as one of the strangest creatures in Chinese myth. This human-like monkey possessed the power to smell the difference between men and women, and would steal women from nearby villages. The people of this region feared the Gévaudan so much that they traced certain family bloodlines back to these beings. The creature stood about as tall as a human, with dark blue fur covering its body. Like a person, it walked on 2 legs and could speak clearly. The Gévaudan lived only as males, which explained their need to take human wives. They made their homes in mountain villages, away from human settlements but close enough to find mates. One famous story tells of a Gévaudan who tried to trick travelers by acting as a helpful ferryman. Night after night, this creature would carry people across a river on its back, speaking kindly and refusing any payment. A brave man named Huang Dunli grew suspicious of the ferryman's behavior. After watching for 3 days, Huang forced the creature to cross the river as a passenger instead. When Huang threw a rock at the ferryman, the Gévaudan showed its true form and met its end. The Gévaudan changed the lives of the women they captured in lasting ways. After 10 years in the mountains, these women would begin to look and think like the creatures themselves. Those who gave birth to Gévaudan children could return to their villages, but they had to bring their babies with them. The children looked almost completely human, and they all took the family name Yang. Even today, some people in southwest China with the surname Yang believe their ancestors include these mysterious beings. In the ancient forests of India lived Kabanda, a cursed demon with arms that could stretch for miles. This strange being once lived as a beautiful celestial musician in heaven, but his pride led to his downfall. People feared Kabanda because he grabbed travelers with his long arms and ate them whole, terrorizing both holy men and warriors who passed through his woods. His form was unlike any other creature in stories or nature. Picture a massive barrel-like body with no head, just a single yellow eye glowing from his chest, and a huge mouth on his belly. His arms could reach out like giant tree branches to catch his prey, and his dark skin looked like storm clouds. When he spoke, his voice boomed like thunder through the forest. The great hero Rama and his brother Lakshmana met Kabanda while searching for Rama's missing wife. The demon caught both brothers in his mighty arms and tried to eat them, but they fought back with their swords. They cut off his arms, and as Kabanda fell, he asked them to burn his body. When they did, the fire broke his curse, and he changed back into his beautiful heavenly form. Kabanda's story taught people that even the most horrible curse could end with kindness. After the brothers freed him, he helped them find Rama's wife by telling them where to meet Sugriva, a monkey king who would lead them to her. The demon who once scared everyone became a guide who helped two heroes save the world, showing that anyone could change for the better. In ancient Jewish tales, a magical deer called the Koresh lived in a special forest named Bay Eli. This rare creature had a single horn on its head and skin so large it could cover the length of 15 grown men lying head to toe. The Koresh shared its forest home with another mighty beast, a lion whose roar could shake cities. Unlike normal deer with 2 antlers, the Koresh stood out with its one great horn rising from its head. Its massive size made even the largest normal deer look small in comparison. The skin of this creature stretched longer than any other animal known to the ancient world. A famous story tells of how a Roman leader named Hadrian wanted to see the lion that lived with the Koresh. A wise Jewish teacher warned him this was no normal lion, but Hadrian insisted. When the lion roared from far away, its voice was so powerful it knocked down Rome's walls and made the emperor fall from his chair in fear. The tales of the Koresh and the Bay Eli lion taught people about respecting powers greater than themselves. Even mighty rulers like Hadrian learned that some forces of nature should be left in peace. These stories helped explain why certain places and creatures should remain wild and untouched. The sacred Khepri lived in ancient Egypt, where he pushed the sun across the sky each day as his most important duty. This beetle-headed god held the power to bring new life from death, just as the real dung beetle creates new life from waste. The Egyptians saw him as a key helper of Ra, the sun god, and believed Khepri kept the world alive by making sure each dawn arrived. His form mixed human and insect parts in an eye-catching way. Khepri had the strong body of a man, but wore the head of a dung beetle, complete with a hard shell and long feelers. Like the real beetles he copied, he often appeared pushing a giant ball that looked like the sun, using his front legs just as dung beetles push their balls of food across the sand. The most famous story of Khepri tells how he saved Egypt from staying in darkness forever. When Apophis, the giant snake of chaos, tried to stop the sun from rising, Khepri fought through the dark underground world each night. He pushed the sun up from the east every morning, showing his strength by never failing at this task even once over thousands of years. The Egyptian people looked to Khepri as a sign of hope and new starts. Farmers watched real dung beetles to guess when the floods would come, linking Khepri to the fertile soil that fed the kingdom. Common people wore small beetle-shaped charms for luck, while kings put golden beetles in their tombs to help them come back to life, just as Khepri brought back the sun each morning. Kumbhakarna lived in the ancient land that would become India, where he gained the power to sleep for 6 months at a time and wake with the strength of 1,000 warriors. People both feared and respected this giant demon because he showed great loyalty to his family while also having the power to swallow whole armies in his endless hunger. As tall as a mountain and strong as an earthquake, Kumbhakarna had the shape of a man but grew to the size of a titan. His mouth opened wide enough to eat 1,000 soldiers in one bite, and it took 1,000 elephants walking across his body just to wake him from his deep sleep. His name means pot-eared, because his ears were as large as great clay vessels. The gods feared Kumbhakarna's power so much that they tricked him when he asked them for a gift. They made him say the wrong words, asking for sleep instead of strength. When his brother begged the gods to show mercy, they agreed to let Kumbhakarna wake for 6 months of each year. During one great battle, he fought against Lord Rama's army, and beat even the mighty warrior Hanuman, before Rama finally stopped him with magic arrows. His story taught people about the power of family ties and doing what is right, even when it leads to hard choices. Kumbhakarna knew his brother had done wrong by stealing Rama's wife, but he fought to protect his home anyway. Even today, parents tell their children about the giant who chose loyalty over an easy life, showing that family duty matters more than personal gain. Across the green hills of Ireland, the leprechaun lived as a tiny magical shoemaker who kept a pot of gold hidden at the end of the rainbow. People searched for these clever beings because anyone who caught a leprechaun could win 3 wishes or find its treasure, but the creature used tricks to escape almost every time. Standing 3 feet tall, the leprechaun wore a bright red coat with gold buttons and a pointed hat cocked to one side. His wrinkled face carried a pointed nose, often topped with tiny glasses, and his skilled hands never stopped working on the shoes he made and fixed. In the rainy western parts of Ireland, he added a thick coat over his fine clothes to stay dry. The oldest story tells of how King Fergus fell asleep on a beach, where 3 leprechauns tried to drag him into the sea. The king woke up and caught them, but they bought their freedom by granting him 3 wishes. From that day on, people knew that catching a leprechaun meant winning wishes, but they had to be very careful with their words. These magical beings shaped how Irish people saw luck and wealth. Farmers and villagers spent hours searching for leprechauns, hoping to change their fortune. The shoemaker spirits played along, often sitting in plain sight while working on a single shoe, but they used clever words and magic to fool anyone who tried to get their gold. In the mountains of Cithaeron near the city of Thebes, a giant lion hunted both people and animals with equal hunger. This beast struck such fear into the hearts of local farmers that they stopped tending their fields and kept their children locked safely inside their homes. The lion stood as tall as 2 men, and had a hide so thick that no spear could pierce it. Its teeth gleamed like polished daggers, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural fire in the dark. Unlike normal lions that hunt at dawn and dusk, this monster stalked its prey at all hours. Alcathaus, a brave hero, tracked the lion to its cave after it killed his young son. The hero fought the beast with his bare hands since weapons could not harm it. For hours they wrestled on the mountainside until Alcathaus finally choked the life from the monster, though the fight left him badly wounded. The people of Thebes made Alcathaus their king as a reward for killing the lion. They hung the beast's huge pelt in their temple as a reminder of how one person's courage could overcome even the most feared monster. Farmers returned to their fields, children played outside again, and the mountain paths became safe for travelers. In ancient Persia, a fearsome beast called the manticore struck terror into the hearts of travelers and villagers alike. This mighty creature possessed the unique ability to shoot poisonous spikes from its tail like arrows, killing its victims instantly. The manticore earned its name from Persian words meaning man-eater, as it hunted humans above all other prey. The manticore combined features from 3 deadly animals into one terrifying hunter. It had the proud face of a human with bright blue eyes, set upon the powerful body of a lion with red fur like flame. Its most feared weapon was its scorpion-like tail, which measured longer than a man's arm and bristled with deadly spikes that could shoot forward, sideways, or backward. Greek writers tell of a manticore that Indians captured and brought as a gift to the Persian king. The beast proved so dangerous that its captors had to crush its tail with stones while it was still young, preventing its poisonous spikes from growing. Even without its spikes, the manticore remained deadly thanks to its 3 rows of sharp teeth and lion's claws. The manticore shaped how people lived in ancient times, forcing them to travel in large groups and avoid lonely paths where the beast might lurk. Stories say it could leap across wide rivers and run faster than any horse, making escape impossible. Only elephants could survive its poison, and only lions dared to stand against it in battle. The beast's voice added to its horror, sounding like a mixture of trumpet calls and pipe music that mimicked human speech. The Masingu wandered through the thick forests of northeastern America, watching over the wild deer and protecting nature's balance. This forest spirit held power over all woodland creatures, and could speak with animals in their own languages. The Lenape people both feared and honored the Mesingwu because it punished those who killed too many animals, but rewarded respectful hunters. Small but mighty, the Mesingwu stood no taller than a child, with its body covered in thick, dark hair like a bear cub. It always wore a red and black wooden mask to hide its twisted face, which showed anger on one side and joy on the other. The spirit traveled through the woods riding on the back of a pure white deer, moving faster than any human could run. One famous story tells how the Mesingwu tested a young hunter who had not made an offering before his hunt. The spirit sent all the deer away from the hunter's path, leaving him hungry for many days. When the hunter finally placed tobacco leaves as a gift to the forest, the Mesing led a fat deer right to his camp and blessed him with good hunting from that day forward. The Mesingwu shaped how the Lenape people lived and hunted in the forest. Hunters would leave small gifts like tobacco or cornmeal at the base of trees before they began their hunt. Parents taught their children to listen for the sound of branches cracking in the woods, which meant the Mesingwu was nearby, watching to see if they treated the forest with respect. Within an elaborate maze on the island of Crete lived the Minotaur, a fearsome creature that was half human and half bull. This monster dwelled at the heart of the labyrinth, a vast network of twisting paths built by a skilled builder named Daedalus. Every 9 years, 14 young people from Athens had to enter the maze as offerings to feed the beast, making it one of the most dreaded creatures in ancient Greece. The Minotaur had the powerful body of a man, but the head and tail of a bull, combining human cunning with animal strength. It stood upright on 2 legs like a person, yet its bull's head featured sharp horns and a mouth that could bellow with terrible force. Artists often showed the creature as muscular and fierce, emphasizing both its human and animal parts to create an image that struck fear into people's hearts. The hero, Theseus, finally ended the Minotaur's reign of terror in a famous battle at the center of the maze. The king's daughter, Ariadne, gave Theseus a ball of thread so he could find his way back out. He tied one end at the entrance and unwound it as he walked deeper into the labyrinth. After finding and killing the Minotaur with his bare hands, Theseus followed the thread back to safety, freeing Athens from its terrible duty. The Minotaur came to life because of pride and punishment from the gods. King Minos of Crete angered the sea god Poseidon by keeping a beautiful white bull instead of offering it as a sacrifice. In revenge, Poseidon made the king's wife fall in love with the bull, leading to the birth of the Minotaur. The creature's very existence reminded people that no one, not even a king, should ignore promises made to the gods. The monster's story shaped how ancient Greeks thought about pride and punishment. They built temples showing Theseus fighting the Minotaur and told the tale to teach children about bravery and keeping promises. The maze that held the Minotaur became so famous that even today, people use the word labyrinth to describe any complex and confusing path. Tales tell of the Monoceros, a powerful beast that roamed the lands of ancient Greece and Persia. No wall or armor could stop this creature, as its single spiral horn could pierce through anything in its path. Kings and warriors both feared and hunted the Monoceros, for they believed its horn held magic that could cure illness and show if food contained poison. The Monoceros combined features from many animals into one strange form. Its head looked like a deer's, crowned with that deadly horn in the center. The body matched a horse in size and shape, but its feet spread wide and flat like an elephant's. Behind it swung a curly tail like a pig's, and its coat shone pure white in the sun. Only one thing could calm a charging Monoceros: the presence of a young maiden. Stories say that when a pure-hearted girl sat in the forest, the fierce beast would come to her quietly and lay its head in her lap. Hunters used this tale to their advantage, placing girls near their traps to catch the mighty creature. People believed the Monoceros protected the forest from evil and kept the water pure with its magical horn. Villages near the woods left offerings for the beast and taught their children to listen for its heavy footsteps. Some even claimed that seeing a Monoceros brought good luck and promised a year of health and wealth for the whole family. It's believed the Moss people lived within as mysterious fairy folk with a special connection to trees. These small beings, known as Mooslight in German, could both heal and harm humans who entered their woodland home. Their very lives were tied to the trees they protected. If someone stripped the bark from a tree, a moss person would die. The moss people looked like tiny men and women covered in soft green moss from head to toe. Some appeared as child-sized creatures with gray, wrinkled faces and wild hair, while others were pretty and youthful. The women often carried baskets of wood on their backs, or sat at crossroads, spinning yarn with old wooden tools. One of their most famous tales tells of their endless flight from the wild hunt, a ghostly group of hunters who chased them through the forest. To escape, the moss people would hide inside trees marked with crosses by kind woodcutters. If a tree lacked this holy mark, they had to keep running until they found shelter or were caught by the hunters. The moss people shaped how German villagers lived their daily lives. They helped humans by teaching them which plants could cure sickness, and they would work at night to clean homes and care for farm animals. But people had to be careful. Giving these spirits bread with caraway seeds would make them angry, and they might steal human babies or send sickness to the village in return. The mountain giants of Norse myths lived high in the frozen peaks of Scandinavia, where they guarded vast treasures in their stone halls. These huge beings could control ice and snow, bringing winter storms down upon the villages below. People both feared the giants for their terrible strength and respected them as ancient powers who shaped the very mountains themselves. Each giant stood as tall as 30 pine trees, with skin like rough granite and eyes that glowed blue as glacier ice. Their hair looked like tangles of dark pine branches covered in frost, while their hands could crush boulders as easily as a child might crumble dried leaves. When they walked, the ground shook, and their footprints became deep valleys filled with snow. The most famous tale tells of a giant named Thrym, who stole Thor's mighty hammer and hid it deep in his mountain fortress. Thrym refused to return the hammer unless the gods gave him the beautiful goddess Freya as his bride. Thor, dressed as Freya, tricked his way into Thrym's feast hall, and when the hammer was brought out as a wedding gift, he grabbed it and killed the foolish giant. The giants shaped how Norse people lived through the long winters. Farmers watched the mountain peaks for signs of giant activity, knowing that their anger could bring killing frosts or avalanches down on crops and homes. Yet some giants also taught humans useful skills, like mining precious metals and reading weather signs in the clouds, showing that even these fearsome beings could sometimes help mankind. In the ancient lands of Australia, the Mungungali struck fear into the hearts of the Yuwalarai people. This giant lizard, bigger than any goanna alive today, had 2 deadly weapons, sharp teeth filled with poison and a hunger that never ended. The tribes feared this beast above all others, as it could kill with a single bite and would eat until nothing remained. The Mungungali looked like a normal goanna lizard, but stood as tall as 3 men. Its rough, scaly skin shone with dark patterns that helped it hide in the shadows of the bush. Like its smaller cousins that still live in Australia today, it had strong legs for running and climbing, and a long tail that could knock down trees. The most famous tale of the Mungungali tells how snakes got their poison. Uyubului, the clever black snake, saw how the giant lizard kept its poison in a special bag in its mouth. While the lizard rested after eating, the snake promised to share a secret if he could hold the poison bag. Once Uyubului got the bag, he ran away with it, making snakes poisonous from that day on. The Mungungali shaped how the Yuwalarai people lived and moved through their land. Parents taught their children to listen for the sound of its heavy tail dragging on the ground. Hunters learned to watch for its tracks, which looked like small canoe marks in the dirt. The story of how it lost its poison gave people hope that even the strongest enemy could be outsmarted. In ancient stories from Greece and Rome lived a strange creature called the Myrmecolian, or ant lion. This beast came from the impossible match between a mighty lion and a tiny ant, gaining powers from both parents. People found this creature fascinating because it showed how mixing 2 different beings could lead to trouble. The ant lion had the fierce face and sharp teeth of a lion attached to the small, hard-shelled body of an ant. Some stories say it grew as big as a regular lion, while others claim it stayed small like a large ant. Its 2 different body parts never quite fit together, making it move in odd ways. The most famous tale of the ant lion tells of its sad fate due to its mixed nature. The lion part of the creature could only eat meat, but the ant part could only digest grain. Because of this split in what it could eat, The poor antlion could not find any food that would keep both parts of its body alive. This story taught people important lessons about trying to force things together that nature meant to keep apart. Monks and teachers used the antlion's tail to show their students how greed or wanting impossible things could lead to problems. Artists drew pictures of the antlion in many old books to remind readers of this message. The Nemean lion prowled the hills of ancient Greece, near the city of Nemea. This mighty beast had golden fur no weapon could pierce and claws sharper than any sword. People feared this monster because it killed anyone who entered its land, and even the bravest warriors could not harm it. The lion looked like a normal lion but much bigger and stronger. Its fur shone like gold in the sunlight, and its eyes glowed like fire in the dark. When it roared, the sound echoed through the hills like thunder, and its huge paws left marks in solid rock when it walked. The most famous story tells how the hero Heracles fought this deadly beast. He tried to shoot it with arrows, but they bounced off its magical fur. Heracles then followed the lion to its cave, blocked one entrance, and went in through the other. In the dark cave, he fought the lion with his bare hands and won by squeezing its neck until it stopped breathing. The lion's death changed how people lived in Nemea. They could now farm their land and walk the hills without fear. Heracles skinned the lion using its own claws, as no knife could cut the magical fur. He wore the golden pelt as armor for the rest of his life, and it protected him from all weapons, just as it had protected the lion. The ogre roamed the dark forests of European lands, using its mighty strength to crush anything in its path. These fearsome creatures stood twice as tall as humans, and could tear down trees with their bare hands. People feared ogres because they hunted at night and were known to break into homes to steal food and treasures. The ogre's body showed its savage nature through every feature. Its skin looked rough and gray like old tree bark, while its head bore a thick mass of wild hair. The ogre's mouth stretched wide with sharp yellow teeth, and its nose grew large and bulbous, helping it smell prey from far away. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness, and their massive hands ended in black curved claws. One famous tale tells of an ogre who lived in a castle and caught people who crossed his bridge. The ogre forced travelers to solve riddles or face being eaten, but he met his match when a clever child tricked him with a simple question about his own name. The child's wit made the ogre so angry that he stamped his foot and broke the bridge, falling into the river below. Villages changed their daily life to stay safe from ogres. People built high walls around their homes and never traveled alone after sunset. Parents taught their children special chants to ward off ogres, and hunters set clever traps around their land. Some towns even held yearly feasts to please the ogres, hoping they would leave the village alone for another season. Orcs lived in the dark mountains and caves of Middle-earth, where they bred vast armies for evil rulers. These fierce fighters could see in darkness and possessed strength greater than normal humans. People feared orcs because they raided villages without mercy, taking whatever they wanted and destroying everything else. The orc's body showed its cruel nature through every feature. Its skin looked rough and gray like old leather, while its face bore a wide mouth filled with sharp fangs. They stood as tall as humans but with longer arms, broader shoulders, and legs that bent outward. Their yellow eyes could pierce the darkest shadows, and their large hands ended in thick, jagged claws. The most famous tale tells of an orc captain who led raids against the horse people of the plains. He attacked at night with hundreds of his soldiers, burning farms and stealing horses. The orc captain met his end when a brave shepherd girl tricked him into following her into a trap, where the morning sun turned him to stone. Villages changed their whole way of life because of orc attacks. Farmers built tall walls around their homes and posted guards every night. People learned to fear darkness and always traveled in groups with torches and weapons. Some towns even trained special warriors who knew how to fight orcs, teaching them to use the orc's fear of sunlight as a weapon. The Oreads lived in the mountains of ancient Greece, where they guarded rocky peaks and hidden caves. These powerful nature spirits could blend into stone and make the ground shake beneath their feet. People respected them because they helped lost travelers find safe paths through dangerous mountain passes. The Oreads looked much like beautiful young women, but their skin had the rough texture of stone, and their hair flowed like waterfalls down their backs. They wore simple dresses made from mountain mist, and their eyes changed color like the sky above the peaks. When they walked, small flowers grew in their footsteps, bringing life to the barren rocks. One famous story tells of an Oread named Echo who lived on Mount Cithaeron. She fell in love with a young man named Narcissus, but could only repeat the last words others said. When Narcissus rejected her love, she faded away until only her voice remained, still echoing through mountain valleys today. Mountain people left small gifts of honey and bread for the Oreads to keep them happy. Shepherds asked these spirits to protect their flocks from wolves and keep paths clear of rock slides. Travelers would whisper the Oreads' names before climbing steep paths, hoping the mountain spirits would guide them safely through storms and fog. In ancient Greece, a fearsome guard dog named Orthrus protected a herd of magical red cattle on a distant island. This mighty beast had 2 heads and came from a family of powerful monsters. Unlike normal dogs that acted as simple pets, Orthrus served as both a guard and a warrior, striking fear into anyone who dared approach the cattle he protected. Orthrus looked like a large dog with 2 heads sitting on powerful shoulders, making him twice as alert as any normal guard dog. His tail sometimes appeared as a living snake, much like his brother Cerberus who guarded the land of the dead. Artists often showed him with sharp teeth in both mouths and eyes that could look in all directions to spot thieves. The greatest hero of Greece, Heracles, faced Orthrus during his famous 12 tasks. When Heracles came to steal the red cattle, Orthrus attacked him with both heads snapping and snarling. The fight ended quickly as Heracles struck the 2-headed dog with his mighty club, killing the beast before taking the cattle he guarded. The story of Orthrus taught ancient Greeks about the price of stealing and the power of bravery. People believed that even the fiercest monsters could fall to a hero who showed enough courage. They painted pictures of Orthrus on their pottery to remind themselves that no guard, no matter how strong, could stop a truly determined hero. The monster left behind an impressive family line, becoming the father of other famous creatures like the Sphinx, a riddling beast with a woman's head and lion's body, and the Nemean lion, whose skin no weapon could pierce. These children of Orthrus created their own stories and challenges for future heroes to face. In ancient Mesopotamia lived Pabilsag, a mighty god who ruled over the city of Larak and had power over both war and law. His greatest skill was his perfect aim with a bow, which made him a feared warrior. People looked up to him as both a fighter and a fair judge, bringing their problems to his temples for answers. As a god who walked among humans, Pabilsag looked like a royal officer in fine robes with a bow always ready at his side. In the night sky, he took a different form as the stars we now call Sagittarius, appearing as a mighty archer with a horse's body and a scorpion's tail. He wore this same shape when carved into ancient boundary stones that marked the edges of lands and cities. The most famous story tells of how Pabilsag fell in love with Ninisina, a goddess who could heal the sick. Each year, she would sail down the river in a beautiful boat to visit him in his city of Larak. Their love was so strong that other healing goddesses began to claim Pabilsag as their husband too, hoping to share in his power and fame. The people built temples to honor Pabilsag and his wife across many cities in their land. Farmers and city folk alike would bring gifts to these temples, asking the god to judge their arguments fairly or protect them in times of war. Even today, we can see how much they respected him because they named one of the gates of the great city Asin after him. The Patupaiarehe lived in the misty mountains and deep forests of New Zealand. These fairy-like beings could control the fog and mist around them, pulling clouds close to hide their homes from human eyes. The sun's rays could kill them, so they only came out at night or on cloudy days, when their sweet, haunting music would drift down from the hills. These beings looked almost human, but with striking differences. They stood as tall as people, but had very pale skin that seemed to glow in the moonlight. Their hair shone like gold, or blazed red like fire, and they never marked their skin with tattoos like the Maori people did. They wore red-dyed clothes made from flax and rough mats that helped them blend into the forest shadows. One of their most famous stories tells of a Patupaiarehe woman named Hinarehia, who fell in love with a human man. She lived with him and taught his people the art of weaving, but she could only work at night. When the villagers tricked her by hiding the morning light and keeping the birds from singing their dawn songs, she learned of their deception. Heartbroken, she flew away in a cloud back to her mountain home, leaving her family behind forever. The Patapaiarehi shaped how people lived their daily lives in New Zealand. Hunters and travelers avoided certain paths in the mountains, fearing these beings who guarded their lands fiercely. People listened for their flute music in the fog as a warning to stay away. If someone found a gourd hanging in a tree, or came across a neat row of plants in the forest, they left them alone, knowing these belonged to the Patapaiarehe, who might seek revenge if their things were taken. Long ago in medieval France, a terrifying beast called the Paluda lived along the river Wien. This monster could cause massive floods and shoot fire from its mouth, destroying crops and bringing famine to nearby towns. The people of La Ferté-Bernard lived in constant fear, as their city walls offered no protection against this deadly creature. The Paluda looked like a mix of several animals combined into one frightening form. It had the head and tail of a snake, but its body was as big as an ox. Green fur covered its entire body, with sharp poisoned spines sticking out through the hair. Its feet were wide and flat like a turtle's, making it strong both in water and on land. The beast's most famous attack happened when it captured a young woman named Lagnelle, which means little lamb in French. Though the Paluda had killed many people before, this time proved different. Lagnelle's brave fiancé discovered the monster's only weakness, its tail. He struck the tail with his sword, and the mighty Paluda fell dead at the bridge of Ivry-l'Évêque. The Paluda's reign of terror changed how people lived in the region for generations. Farmers lost entire flocks of sheep to its attacks, while families feared letting their children play outside. The people of La Ferté-Bernard and Conneray celebrated its death for many years after, and stories say they preserved the beast's body as proof of their victory. Along the forested paths of ancient China lived the Pengho, a mysterious tree spirit that watched over the woods. These beings had the strange power to blend perfectly with tree bark, becoming completely hidden from human eyes. People feared meeting a Pengho in the forest because these spirits guarded their trees fiercely and would attack anyone who tried to cut them down. The Pengho looked like nothing else in nature, with the face of a person but the body of a dog. Its skin matched the color and texture of tree bark so well that even when someone looked right at it, they might think they were just seeing knots and patterns in the wood. When it moved, it could run on all fours like a dog or stand upright like a person. One famous story tells of a woodcutter who ignored warnings about the Pengho's forest. As he raised his axe to cut down an ancient tree, a Pengho appeared from the bark and chased him away. The spirit ran after him on 4 legs but stood up on 2 feet to speak with a human voice, warning him never to return. The Pengho changed how people treated the forests in ancient China. Woodcutters learned to ask permission before cutting trees and would leave offerings at the base of old trees. People began to see forests not just as resources to use, but as places where spirits lived and watched, helping to protect many old growth forests for future generations. In the forests of Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina lives a tricky night spirit called the Pombero. This small creature can turn invisible, slip through tiny spaces, and move without making a sound. People both fear and respect the Pombero because it can either cause trouble for those who ignore it or protect those who treat it well. The Pombero looks like a short, ugly human with very hairy hands and feet. Its small arms and furry feet help it sneak around in total silence. The spirit can copy any birdsong perfectly, especially the calls of night birds, and often warns of its presence with a soft whistle. The spirit loves to play tricks on farmers who fail to respect it. It sets their cows free, steals their eggs and honey, and scares their horses until the riders fall off. But farmers who leave gifts of rum, cigars, or honey for the Pombero find their homes and animals stay safe. Some lucky farmers even receive gifts from the spirit in return. Even today, many people in rural Paraguay believe strongly in the Pombero. They leave offerings every night to keep the spirit happy and protect their farms. The Pombero has become such an important part of daily life that parents teach their children to respect birds and nature, warning them that the Pombero watches over the forest and punishes those who harm its creatures. The Soglav roamed the dark caves of the Balkans, striking fear into people across Bosnia and Montenegro. This flesh-eating monster had the strange power to see in total darkness with its single eye, which glowed like a red coal in the night. Village folk feared this beast above all others because it hunted both the living and the dead, digging up graves to feed its endless hunger. Unlike any natural creature, the Soglav combined parts of many animals into one terrifying form. It walked on horse's legs but had a human body, topped with the head of a huge dog. In its mouth gleamed teeth made of iron, sharp as knives, while a single large eye sat in the middle of its forehead, scanning the darkness for prey. One famous tale tells of a young shepherd who found strange tracks leading to a cave mouth after several of his sheep went missing. Following the prints, he discovered a Soglav's lair filled with gems that sparkled even without light. The shepherd tried to steal some jewels, but the monster caught his scent and chased him for 3 days through the mountains before he finally escaped. The Soglav shaped how mountain people lived their daily lives in the Balkans. Villagers blocked their cave entrances with heavy stones, buried their dead deeper than usual, and never traveled alone after dark. Parents used stories of the Soglav to keep children from wandering too far from home, especially near caves or old burial grounds. According to Brazilians' lore, in the forests of Brazil lives a magical being who rides dust storms and plays endless tricks. The Sachi appears as a small, one-legged man who can vanish and reappear at will using his bright red cap. People both fear and laugh at this creature, who causes mischief wherever he goes, but also grants wishes to anyone clever enough to catch him. Picture a skilled acrobat dressed all in black, balanced perfectly on a single leg while smoking a pipe. The Sachi's most striking features are his magical red cap, which gives off a faint glow, and the strange holes in his palms through which he loves to pass burning matches. Despite missing a leg, he moves with incredible speed and can even ride horses bareback while sitting cross-legged. The most famous tales of the Sachi tell of his endless pranks in farms and homes across Brazil. He sneaks into kitchens to spoil milk and burn food, tangles sewing threads, turns nails point up on the ground, and prevents popcorn from popping. When he spins in circles, he creates small whirlwinds of dust that race across the land, and some say you can trap him by throwing a blessed rosary into these dust devils. Brazilian families learned to live with the Sachi's tricks by finding clever ways to stop him. They discovered he could not cross streams of water, and they could slow him down by dropping knotted ropes, which he felt forced to untie. Some people left him gifts of sugar-cane rum, called cachaça, or tobacco for his pipe to keep him happy. Those who managed to steal his cap or trap him in a bottle could either gain a loyal friend or make a dangerous enemy, depending on how they treated him. The Cerynei lived in the deep forests of the Philippines, where it guarded precious gems that grew from its ears. This mighty beast combined the strength of a water buffalo with human-like thinking, making it one of the most feared creatures in Filipino stories. People both feared and respected the Cerynei because it showed no mercy to those who tried to steal its treasures. The Cerynei looked like a giant water buffalo standing on 2 legs, much like a human. Its dark fur covered muscles as strong as 10 men, and bright gems sparkled from its long ears. When angry, thick smoke poured from its wide nostrils, and its eyes glowed red like hot coals. In the most famous tale, a group of hunters tried to steal the Cerynei's ear gems while it slept. The beast woke up and chased them through the forest, smoke streaming from its nose. All but one hunter died, and he lived to warn others never to disturb the Cerynei's rest or touch its precious gems. Filipino villagers changed their hunting paths to avoid the Cerynei's territory, and parents taught their children to respect the forest's treasures. Hunters made offerings before entering the deep woods, hoping to keep the mighty beast calm. Even today, Filipino stories warn against greed by telling tales of the gem-guarding Cerynei. A satyr looked like a strange mix of human and goat, with the upper body of a man and the legs of a goat ending in hard black hooves. Male satyrs had thick beards, curved horns on their heads, and long pointed ears that could catch the tiniest sounds in the forest. Their eyes glowed like amber in the dark, and their skin turned brown from days spent in the sun. The most famous story of the satyrs tells of a contest between the satyr Marsyas and the god Apollo. Marsyas found a magic flute and learned to play it so well that he thought he could beat Apollo, the god of music, in a contest. Apollo won the contest but became so angry at Marsyas's pride that he punished the satyr harshly, showing both gods and humans the danger of challenging the gods. Greek farmers left small gifts of wine and honey for the satyrs, hoping to keep these magical beings happy. The creatures taught humans about the healing powers of plants, and showed them which mushrooms were safe to eat. People also learned to stay away from the deep woods at noon when satyrs took their daily rest, as they might curse anyone who disturbed their sleep. Female satyrs, called satyresses, protected young animals and helped plants grow in spring. They had softer features than male satyrs, with small horns hidden by flowing hair, and gentler voices that could calm scared children lost in the woods. Unlike the male satyrs who often caused trouble, satyresses helped mothers find herbs to heal their sick babies. In the hot deserts of ancient Mesopotamia lived the fierce scorpion men, mighty guards who watched over the rising and setting sun. These beings held the power to spot danger from miles away, their eyes sharp enough to see through any trick or disguise. People both feared and respected them because they could kill with a single sting, yet they also protected travelers who proved themselves worthy. Their bodies showed a strange mix of human and beast. From the waist up, they looked like strong warriors with human faces and arms. Below the waist, they had the body of a giant scorpion, complete with 8 legs and a long tail that curved up over their backs. Their dark shells gleamed like polished metal in the sun. The most famous tale of the scorpion men tells of how they guarded the mountain pass that led to the Garden of the Gods. When the hero Gilgamesh tried to pass through, they stopped him and tested his courage. Though they could have killed him with their stings, they saw his brave heart and let him continue his journey. The scorpion men shaped how desert people lived their daily lives. Travelers would leave small gifts at the edge of the desert, hoping to win their protection. Parents told their children to be honest and brave like those who passed the scorpion men's test. Some people even carved their image above their doors to guard their homes. In the shadows of Philippine forests and villages, the sigbin hunts for its next meal under the light of the moon. This creature drinks the blood of its victims and can turn invisible at will, making it impossible to catch. Filipino families feared the sigbin because it preyed on young children, sneaking into homes late at night when everyone slept. The sigbin looks like a mix between a goat and a large dog, but with strange twists to its body. Its head hangs between its back legs, forcing it to walk backward, while its front legs bend like human knees. A long, whip-like tail curls over its back, and its glowing red eyes shine in the dark like burning coals. The most chilling story of the sigbin tells of a mother who heard her baby crying in the night. When she reached the child's bed, she found only empty blankets and tiny drops of blood on the floor. Outside, she saw 2 red eyes glowing in the dark, and heard the snap of the sigbin's tail as it vanished into the forest with her child. Village people hung special charms made of garlic and sharp thorns around their windows and doors to keep the sigbin away. Parents warned their children never to answer if they heard strange sounds at night, and some families kept dogs to alert them when a sigbin came near. Even today, some Filipino elders still tell their grandchildren to be home before dark when the sigbin begins its hunt. In northern Sweden's dim forests, the skvader confused hunters with its strange mix of animal parts. This magical beast could both hop like a rabbit and soar through the air, making it nearly impossible to catch. Local people spoke of the skvader with wonder, as only the most skilled hunter claimed to have ever shot one. The skvader looks like nature mixed up 2 different animals in a dream. Its front half shows the strong legs and furry body of a brown hare, perfect for jumping through forest paths. But from its middle back, the creature sprouts the feathered wings and fan-shaped tail of a wood grouse, a large forest bird, giving it the power to escape both on land and in air. One famous tale tells of hunter Håkan Dalmark's lucky shot in 1874, near the town of Sundsvall. As his story goes, he tracked unusual footprints in the snow that turned into bird tracks, and then back to rabbit prints. When he finally spotted the beast, it tried to escape by first running, then taking flight. But his arrow struck true. The people of Sundsvall took such pride in their local legend that they asked a skilled taxidermist to create a skvader for their museum. This model, made in 1918, still draws visitors today who want to see what such a creature might have looked like. Parents now tell their children to watch closely in the woods at dusk, when the skvader might appear in the mix of day and night. Families in the area began placing carved wooden skvaders above their doorways as signs of good luck in hunting. They believed that showing respect to this clever creature would help them track regular game more easily. These carvings became so popular that the skvader turned into a symbol of the region, appearing on local signs and artwork. Spriggans lived in the stone ruins and old burial grounds of Cornwall, England, where they guarded buried treasure with magical powers that let them grow from tiny to giant size in moments. People both feared and avoided these creatures because they had evil tempers and used their powers to harm anyone who came too close to their homes or treasures. These fairy-like beings looked like small, ugly old men with heads too big for their bodies, giving them a strange, childlike look. When they grew angry, they could make themselves as tall as trees, turning from the size of a child's doll to the height of a house in the blink of an eye. The most famous tale of the Spriggans took place at Trencrom Hill, where a group of these creatures caught a woman trying to steal their gold. Instead of running away, she turned her clothes inside out, which Spriggans could not stand near, just as they could not bear the touch of iron. This clever trick forced them to leave their treasure behind, making her the only person known to have gotten the better of these mean-spirited beings. Farmers and travelers lived in fear of Spriggans, who showed no mercy to those who crossed them. They sent wild storms to destroy crops, created whirlwinds to frighten people on the road, and even stole human babies, leaving their own ugly children in their place. If a building fell down or cattle went missing, people blamed the Spriggans. On the darkest nights of winter, people who walked near old mines could hear Spriggans singing from deep underground, where they held their own special church services. Though they lived near mines, the Spriggans were different from the friendly mine spirits called knockers, who helped miners find tin and kept them safe underground. The Stick Indians roamed the thick forests of the Pacific Northwest, where massive trees created endless shadows. These woodland spirits could melt out from tree roots and thorny bushes when travelers passed by. People feared them because they used whistles and animal calls to lead hunters away from their camps at night. These beings looked like tall, lean shadows that moved between trees without making a sound. Their bodies seemed made of twisted branches and dark bark, helping them blend into the forest. Their eyes glowed like tiny flames, and their long fingers ended in sharp wooden points that could tear through flesh. One famous story tells of a hunter who heard what sounded like his friend whistling for help deep in the woods. When he followed the sound, he found himself walking in circles until morning. Each time he tried to turn back, another whistle came from a different direction. Only the first light of dawn saved him, as Stick Indians could not stay in their solid form once the sun rose. The thread of Stick Indians shaped how native tribes moved through the forests. No one traveled alone after dark, and hunters learned to ignore any calls that came after sunset. Parents taught their children to stuff their ears with cloth if they heard whistling at night, and many tribes banned mimicking bird calls after dark to avoid drawing these spirits near. The tall man stalks the rainforests of Queensland, Australia, where native Aboriginal people have feared him for thousands of years. He slips out from narrow spaces between rocks and deep shadows when night falls, using his enormous height to tower over the treetops. His power to stretch himself taller than the highest trees lets him spot people trying to hide from him, making him one of the most feared spirits in Aboriginal stories. His body looks like a very thin black shadow that can change its shape at will. When he stands straight, he reaches far above the forest canopy, but he can also shrink down small enough to slide through tiny cracks in stone. His fingers stretch out like long branches, and his eyes glow red in the darkness, making him easy to spot but impossible to escape. One famous story tells of a young hunter who stayed in the forest after sunset, breaking a sacred rule. The tall man found him and chased him through the trees, stretching higher and higher to keep the hunter in sight. Though the hunter ran for hours and tried to hide in a hollow tree, the tall man's long fingers reached inside and pulled him out, and the hunter was never seen again. The tall man changed how Aboriginal people lived their daily lives. Tribes created strict rules about staying out of the rainforest at night, and parents taught their children to listen for his soft footsteps in the dark. People learned to block all cracks and gaps in their homes, since the tall man could make himself thin enough to slip through any opening left uncovered. The fear of the tall man kept people safe from the real dangers of the rainforest at night, like poisonous snakes and getting lost in the dark. Elders used his story to teach young people to respect the forest's power and follow tribal laws that helped their communities survive in a dangerous land. In the ancient forest of Bay Ilai, a massive lion known as Tigris ruled over all other creatures with its mighty roar that could shake the earth itself. This beast stood as tall as 3 men and possessed the power to make the ground tremble when it walked. People both feared and respected Tigris because its roar could split rocks and cause trees to fall. Unlike normal lions, Tigris had fur that shone like polished bronze in the sunlight, and each of its teeth was as long as a man's arm. Its paws left prints deep enough to form small ponds when it rained, and its tail could sweep aside whole groups of trees like they were twigs. Its eyes glowed with an inner fire that could be seen from far away at night. The most famous tale of Tigris tells of the time it faced a group of hunters who tried to catch it in nets made of bronze chains. The great beast broke free with one mighty shake, then roared so powerfully that the hunters dropped their weapons and ran away in fear. The echo of that roar rang through the forest for 7 days, and even the birds stopped singing during that time. People changed their whole way of life because of Tigris. They built their homes far from the paths where it walked and taught their children to listen for the sound of its footsteps. Hunters would leave offerings of meat at the edge of the forest before they went hunting, hoping to win its favor. Those who showed respect to Tigris often found good hunting, while those who ignored these rules faced its anger. According to locals, deep in the mountains and rainforests of the Philippines lives the tikbalang, a spirit that leads travelers away from their paths. This tall forest creature can make people walk in circles for hours, no matter which way they try to go. The tikbalang guards sacred trees and nature spots, keeping watch over its domain with clever tricks and scary appearances. The tikbalang looks like a mix between a human and a horse, with strange body parts that make it hard to miss. It stands very tall on 2 legs, with a horse's head sitting on top of a human-like body. Its legs stretch so long that when it squats down, its knees rise above its head. A mane of sharp spines runs down its back, with 3 special spines that hold magical powers. The most famous story about the tikbalang tells how brave humans can catch and tame this mighty beast. A person must jump onto the tikbalang's back and hold tight with a magic rope, while the creature flies through the air, twisting and fighting to throw them off. If the rider stays on until the tikbalang gives up, they gain a powerful servant for life. Some say pulling the 3 golden hairs from its mane will also make the tikbalang serve you forever. Filipino people changed their actions in daily life because they believed in the tikbalang's power. They would wear their shirts inside out when walking in the forest to stop the spirit from tricking them. People also asked out loud for permission to pass through the woods and stayed quiet on forest paths to avoid making the tikbalang angry. Even today, when rain falls from a clear sky, Filipino people say a tikbalang must be getting married. This mix of fear and respect for the tikbalang shows how nature spirits shaped life in the Philippines. Each large tree might house a tikbalang guardian, watching over the wild places where humans and spirits meet. People learned to move carefully through these spaces, knowing that showing respect to the tikbalang meant having a safer journey through its forest home. The Tokoloshe haunted the villages of South Africa, using magic to become invisible at will. This small but mighty spirit could slip into homes at night through the tiniest cracks and gaps. The Zulu people both feared and sought help from the Tokoloshe, as some believed it could bring both curses and good fortune to those who knew how to work with it. The creature stood no taller than a young child, with thick dark hair covering its small but strong body. Its feet pointed backward instead of forward, letting it confuse trackers who tried to follow its footprints. The Tokoloshi's eyes glowed like hot coals in the dark, and it carried a magic stone that helped it disappear whenever it wished. One famous tale tells of a Tokoloshe who fell in love with a woman and visited her each night, becoming visible only to her. Her husband grew jealous of her talking to thin air and called a Sangoma, a traditional healer, for help. The Sangoma sprinkled special herbs around the house that forced the Tokoloshe to stay visible, showing everyone it was real before it ran away in shame. Many South African families still raise their beds on bricks or stones to stay safe from the Tokoloshe's mischief. They believe keeping their beds higher than the Tokoloshe can reach protects them while they sleep. Some people leave small gifts of food and shiny objects near their doors to keep the spirit happy and prevent it from causing trouble in their homes. In the misty forests of Chile's Chiloé Islands lives the Traco, a powerful forest spirit who charms young women with his magic gaze. This small but fearsome being uses a stone axe to cut down trees and mark his territory. Local people both fear and respect the Traco because he can curse those who anger him or bless those who show him kindness. The Traco looks like a short, sturdy man no taller than a child, wearing clothes made from twisted tree bark and moss. His face shows both handsome and ugly features, with bright eyes that can entrance anyone who looks into them too long. Though he walks with a limp, he climbs trees as fast as a monkey and moves through the forest without making a sound. A famous story tells of a young woman who met the Traco while picking berries in the woods. She fell under his spell and visited him every day, bringing him gifts of food and pretty stones. Her family worried when she started spending all her time in the forest, but they knew better than to stop her visits. The Traco blessed her family's crops and kept their farm safe from wild animals as thanks for her friendship. People living near the forests of Chiloé still leave small gifts for the Traco, hanging shiny objects from tree branches, or placing fresh bread on stumps near their homes. Parents warn their daughters not to walk alone in the woods, especially on foggy days when the Traco's magic grows stronger. Some families plant thorny bushes around their houses to keep him away, while others welcome his protection of their land. In the snowy mountains of old Scandinavia lived the trolls, mighty beings with the power to turn into stone when touched by sunlight. These creatures made their homes in deep caves and rocky peaks, far from human towns and villages. The Norse people both feared and respected trolls, as they possessed great strength and ancient magic. Trolls came in many shapes and sizes, from as small as a human to as tall as a pine tree. Some looked ugly and mean, with rough skin like bark and noses as big as fists. Others could appear as beautiful as any person, which made them even more dangerous because they could trick humans into following them into the mountains. The most famous story tells of how trolls would try to stop churches from being built by throwing huge rocks at them during the night. When morning came, the sunlight would catch the trolls still holding their boulders, turning them to stone where they stood. Today, people in Norway and Sweden point to odd-shaped rocks and say these were once trolls caught by the morning sun. Trolls shaped how people in the north lived their lives for hundreds of years. Farmers would not let their children out after dark, fearing the trolls might steal them away to their mountain homes. People rang church bells to keep trolls away from their lands, and they marked their doors with crosses for protection. When thunder rolled across the sky, they said it was Thor, the god of thunder, fighting the trolls to protect humankind. Far in the northern islands of Scotland lived mysterious beings called trows. These fairy-like creatures came out only at night and loved music more than anything else in the world. The people of the Orkney and Shetland Islands both feared and respected trows because they would steal musicians away to play for them in their underground homes. Trows looked different to each person who saw them. Some people said trows stood as tall as giants with more than one head, while others claimed they were small creatures who wore gray clothes. They lived inside hills called knows, and if they failed to return home before sunrise, they had to wait above ground until the next sunset. The most famous story about trows tells of a skilled fiddle player who caught their attention. The trows invited him to play music in their underground home, and the musician happily agreed. When he finally returned home, he discovered that what felt like a few hours of playing had actually been many years. Upon learning this, his body turned to dust because so much time had passed in the human world. Trows shaped how island people lived their daily lives. No one walked near the trow hills after dark, and people thought it brought bad luck to see a trow. However, hearing a trow speak meant good fortune would come. Some of the island's most beautiful fiddle music came from tunes that humans learned by listening to trows play inside their hills. The Cegeta roam the snowy valleys of Switzerland's Lutschental region during the cold winter months. These tall, fur-covered beings wear carved wooden masks with fierce expressions and carry wooden clubs as they chase people through village streets. The local people both fear and celebrate these creatures, turning their appearance into a yearly festival that marks the end of winter. The monsters stand about 7 feet tall, with thick fur made from sheep and goat pelts covering their entire bodies. Their masks show twisted faces with large noses, sharp teeth, and dark eyes that seem to glow in the winter darkness. They walk with a stomping motion that makes their heavy copper bells ring out across the snow-covered mountains. According to stories passed down through families, the Cegeta were once Celtic warriors who fled into the Alps thousands of years ago. These warriors grew wild and hairy as they lived in mountain caves, stealing food from villages and frightening anyone who wandered too far from home at night. They became known for appearing suddenly from the darkness, chasing young people through the streets, and marking their victims with soot. The Cegeta shaped how people in the valley lived during winter months. Parents used stories about these creatures to keep children from wandering into dangerous snowy areas. Families would leave small gifts of food outside their doors on certain nights, hoping to protect themselves from the monster's mischief. The tradition grew into a celebration where young men of the village dress as Cegeta during the weeks before Lent, turning an old fear into a source of pride and fun. The creatures still influence local craft and culture today. Mask carvers spend months creating new Cegeta faces from pine wood, each one showing its own scary expression. Young people learn the traditional stomping walk and bell-ringing patterns, keeping alive the memory of the wild beings who once ruled their winter nights. The Vosges haunted the foggy lanes of Jersey, a small island between England and France. This tall, skeletal creature waited in the mist for travelers who walked alone at night. Its greatest power lay in its iron-like grip that could snap bones with a single squeeze, making it one of the most feared beings among Jersey's villagers. The Vosges looked like a living scarecrow with dry, papery skin stretched over sharp bones. Its arms reached down past its knees, ending in long fingers with curved nails like hooks. Its face showed only dark holes where eyes should be, and its mouth filled with rows of thin, needle-like teeth. People tell of young Thomas Durant, who laughed at warnings about walking home through the marsh one winter night. The Vosges seized him by the legs, breaking both his ankles with a terrible crack. It began dragging him across the ground toward its lair, but Thomas grabbed onto a fence post and screamed so loudly that nearby farmers came running with torches, forcing the monster to flee. Jersey folk changed their whole way of life because of the Vosges. They never walked alone after sunset, always carried lanterns, and built their paths away from the marshes where it lived. Parents taught children to listen for its shuffling footsteps in the dark, and farmers put bells on their fences that would ring if the creature touched them. The Wolpertinger lived in the dark forests of Bavaria, a region in southern Germany. This strange animal had the power to fool hunters with its mix of rabbit, bird, and other animal parts. People both feared and respected the Wolpertinger because it could only be seen by brave travelers walking alone at night, making any sighting a test of courage. The creature looked like a large rabbit with unusual extras added by nature. It had the strong wings of a pheasant growing from its furry back, sharp fangs poking out from under its nose, and small deer antlers sprouting from its head. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, and its feet had the sharp claws of a crow. One famous story tells of a young hunter who tried to catch a Wolpertinger to prove his skill. He went into the woods on a full moon night, carrying only a lantern and a small net. The Wolpertinger led him deeper and deeper into the forest, always staying just out of reach. When morning came, the hunter found himself lost but safely at the door of a wise old woman who gave him shelter and taught him to respect the forest's mysteries. The Wolpertinger shaped how people behaved in the Bavarian forests. Hunters learned to be humble about their skills, knowing that this clever beast could outsmart them. Parents used stories about the Wolpertinger to teach their children not to wander in the woods at night. travelers often left small gifts of food at the forest edge, hoping the creature would guide them safely through the dark paths. In the red sands of Southeast Australia, the Howie struck fear into the hearts of Aboriginal tribes. This mighty beast lived in a deep cave along the Murray River, using its 6 powerful legs to shape the land into rolling hills. The Howie could move without making a sound, and in one night it could eat an entire tribe of people. The Howie looked like no other creature on Earth. Its body stretched as long as 7 big trees laid end to end, with scales like a goanna lizard covering its massive form. The beast had a head shaped like a giant frog, with eyes that could spot prey in the darkest night, and teeth sharp enough to crush bone. One tribe, the Water Rat people, grew tired of living in fear and made a bold plan. They called all nearby tribes to bring their weapons and many bundles of sticks. The tribes worked as one, piling the sticks at the mouth of the Wowie's cave and setting them ablaze. For 7 days and nights they kept the fire burning. Smoke filled the cave until the Howie could not stand it anymore. The great beast came rushing out, its eyes stinging and blind from the thick smoke. The tribe stood ready with their spears and stone axes, striking together against their feared enemy. At last, the Wowie fell, and the people of the Murray River could live without fear again. The giant ground sloth lived in South America during a time when most animals were much bigger than they are today. These massive plant eaters could stand as tall as 14 feet, making them one of the largest mammals to walk the earth. People who study ancient life found their bones across the grasslands and forests, from Brazil to Argentina, showing how widely these creatures once roamed. This ancient sloth looked nothing like its small, tree-climbing cousins we see today. It had thick, shaggy fur covering its whole body, and powerful arms with huge claws that could rip through tree branches. Its strong back legs let it stand up straight, while its heavy tail helped it balance like a tripod. When it stood tall, it could reach the highest tree branches that other plant eaters could not reach. The most famous story about giant ground sloths comes from a cave in Nevada, where scientists found thousands of their footprints preserved in stone. The tracks show how these huge beasts walked on their hind legs, swaying from side to side as they moved. Some prints even show where they sat down to dig for food with their long claws, leaving deep marks in the ground that turned to stone over time. These gentle giants shaped the land where they lived by spreading plant seeds through their droppings and clearing paths through thick forests. They ate fruits and leaves from trees that grew too tall for other animals to reach, helping these plants spread across the land. Many of the fruit trees that grow in South America today first spread their seeds through these ancient sloths' digestive systems. The end of their story fits into a bigger tale about climate change and human hunters. As the weather grew warmer and people moved into their lands, these huge sloths could not adapt quickly enough to survive, but they left their mark on the land, as some plants still wait for large animals to eat and spread their seeds, just as they did when giant sloths roamed the earth. The Yeren roams the deep forests of Hubei's Shenongjia Mountains in China. This ape-like being stands twice as tall as a human and shows great strength in bending trees and lifting heavy rocks. Local people both fear and respect the Yeren because it guards its territory fiercely but has never killed a human. The creature looks like a mix between a human and an ape, with thick reddish-brown fur covering its whole body. Its face appears flat with deep-set eyes and strong teeth, while its arms reach down past its knees. The Yeren walks upright on 2 legs, leaving footprints twice the size of human feet in the soft forest ground. A famous story tells of a group of hunters who tracked the Yeren through snow in 1976. They followed its huge footprints to a cave where they found nests made of branches and grass. The creature appeared suddenly, standing 7 feet tall, and scared the hunters away with loud screams that echoed through the mountains. The Yeren shaped how people lived in the Shenongjia region for hundreds of years. Farmers built their homes away from certain forests where the creature lived, and hunters learned to avoid its territory. People still warn their children to stay close to the village after dark, telling stories of the Yeren's mighty roars carrying through the night air. The Yeti roams the snowy peaks of the Himalayan mountains between Nepal, Tibet, and Bhutan. This mighty creature shows amazing strength by breaking tree branches and lifting heavy rocks with ease. Local people view the Yeti with deep respect, as they believe it guards sacred mountain paths and can survive in places where humans cannot live. The beast stands about 8 feet tall with thick brown or grayish fur covering its entire body. Its huge feet leave prints in the snow twice the size of human footprints, and its arms reach past its knees like those of a great ape. The Yeti walks upright on 2 legs like a person, but moves through deep snow and ice with the sure-footed skill of a mountain goat. In 1951, famous mountain climber Eric Shipton found strange footprints high on Mount Everest at 20,000 feet above the ground. He took clear photos of the prints, which showed 2 large toes and 3 smaller ones grouped together. The prints formed a line through the snow as if made by something walking on 2 legs, and Shipton placed his ice axe next to one print to show its huge size. The Yeti shaped how mountain peoples lived their daily lives for hundreds of years. Villagers built their homes away from certain high passes where they believed Yetis lived, and travelers learned to avoid these areas after dark. Sherpa guides still warn climbers to respect the mountain spirits, and tell stories of the Yeti's mighty roars echoing through valleys filled with snow. Buddhist monks in Tibet saw the Yeti as a guardian of the mountains, and kept what they claimed were Yeti bones and fur in their temples. People brought gifts to these temples and asked the monks to pray for safe passage through Yeti territory, showing how the creature became part of both local beliefs and daily mountain life. The Yowie roams the thick forests and bushlands of Australia, from the Blue Mountains to Queensland's remote areas. This ape-like being stands much taller than humans and shows great strength, able to break thick tree branches with ease. Native Australian peoples have passed down stories of the Yowie for thousands of years, warning others to stay away from its territory, especially after dark. The creature looks like a mix between a very tall human and a large ape, covered in thick, dark fur from head to toe. Most people who claim to have seen it say it stands about 8 feet tall, with long arms that reach past its knees, and feet twice the size of a human's. Its face shows a mix of ape and human features, with deep-set eyes that glow red in the dark, and a wide, flat nose. One of the most famous Yowie stories comes from a group of campers in New South Wales in 1976. The creature reportedly walked into their campsite, picked up their heavy metal cooler full of food, and threw it more than 30 feet through the air. When the campers tried to scare it away with their flashlights, it let out a loud roar that echoed through the valley before disappearing into the bush. Aboriginal people changed many of their daily habits because of the Yowie, marking certain parts of the forest as places to avoid. They would not gather food or hunt in areas where the Yowie had been seen, and they taught their children special signals to warn others if they spotted the creature. Some communities even built their homes closer together for safety, believing the Yowie would not approach larger groups of people. The Yowie's presence shaped how people moved through the Australian wilderness, creating no-go zones that some still avoid today. Campers and hikers now carry cameras hoping to prove its existence, while others plan their trips to stay far from areas where people report seeing the creature. Many Australian towns near the bush have their own Yowie stories, which they share to warn visitors about wandering too far into the wild. The Ipetril roamed the misty forests of medieval England, though it lived only in the dreams of noble families who wanted special creatures for their coats of arms. This strange beast carried the strength of 4 different animals in one body, making it a perfect symbol of power and honor. Knights and lords chose the Ipetril for their shields because it showed they had the cunning of a boar, the endurance of a camel, the strength of an ox, and the wisdom of a snake. The being stood as tall as a horse, with thick legs ending in split hooves that left deep tracks in the earth. Its most striking feature was its boar's head, complete with sharp tusks that curved up like swords. A large hump rose from its back like a camel's, covered in thick fur that changed color with the seasons. Its snake-like tail could stretch longer than a man's arm and moved on its own like a living whip. The most famous tale of the Ipetril comes from a knight who claimed it saved his life during a winter storm. Lost in the woods, he followed the beast's tracks through deep snow until they led him to a cave. The Ipetril used its boar's tusks to dig up roots for food. Its camel's hump kept them warm through the night, and its snake tail caught fish from a nearby stream. Noble families believed the Ipetril brought them good fortune and protection. They carved its image above their castle doors and wove it into their tapestries, telling their children that the beast watched over them at night. Servants left out bowls of milk and honey, hoping to attract a real ipetrel to guard their master's lands. Even today, some English mansions still display this impossible creature in their family crests, keeping its memory alive through art and story. In the misty islands of Haiti, zombies first emerged as spirits that could control human bodies. These walking dead followed the commands of powerful magic users called bokors, who used special powders and spells to raise them. People feared zombies because no lock or wall could stop these tireless servants who felt no pain and never needed to rest. A zombie looks like a person who has risen from the grave but moves as if in a dream. Its skin hangs loose and gray, while its eyes stay empty and blank. These creatures shuffle when they walk, drag their feet in the dust, and never speak or show any sign of thought or feeling. The most famous zombie story tells of a man named Clervius Narcisse, who died in a hospital but appeared 18 years later in his village. He told people a bokor had turned him into a zombie and forced him to work on a sugar farm. Narcisse remembered everything that happened but could not control his own body until the bokor died. Zombies changed how people in Haiti thought about death and made them take special care with funerals. Families would place sharp objects in the coffin or feed the dead person salt, which they believed stopped the body from rising. Some people still guard graveyards at night and look for signs that a bokor might try to steal a body.